In a war for the Holy Grail, a relic that has the power to grant any wish, 7 masters are chosen, and they each summon a legendary hero throughout history to be their servant and fight on their behalf. The story begins 8 years in the past, where a man named Kiritsugu is told that his daughter has been born. So he goes to see his wife Irie, but he tells her he'll be the reason for her death. She mentions that he's the one who made her who she is, and he saved her from living her life like a puppet, so she tells him not to feel any pity for her, telling him she'll always be a part of him. He thinks he has no right to hold his daughter, but Irie reminds him he's fighting to make the world a better place. She tells him his fight will end in 8 years, so he should hold his daughter and feel proud like any other father. 5 years later, a command seal appears on a man named Karia, which means he's a participant in the Holy Grail War. It grants him the power to command a servant, which is a summoned spirit of an ancient hero. A man named Tokiomi Tosaka mentions that most of the participants chosen are mages, so it's unusual for a man like Karia to be chosen, because he has no connection to magic. His father, Rise, notes that there's an unspoken rule among the participants to hold all the battles in secret. He explains that the Holy Church sends an observer to make sure the rule is followed, and Karia is surprised that a normal person can judge the fights between mages. Tokiomi explains that a Mages Association member would be too partial to one party, so Rise will oversee their battles to ensure fairness, just like he did 60 years ago. But Karia notes that he's the son of the overseer, so he wonders if it could cause problems. Rise reveals that the Holy Grail that will appear in Fuyuki City isn't the sacred relic of the Son of God, but it's still too powerful to be ignored, since it's an omnipotent wish-granting device, so they need to make sure it falls into the right hands. He notes that the Tosaka family has a good relationship with the church, and their goal is to reach the root of magic. But Tokiomi mentions that the 2 other families, the Einsburns and the Matos, don't have the same goal, so Kiri's job is to make sure Tokiomi wins the war. Tokiomi tells Karia that they'll act like enemies, but they'll work together to defeat the other 5 masters. For that to happen, Karia will be transferred to the Mages Association, where he'll learn magic under Tokiomi, so that he can become a mage capable of commanding a servant. He wonders how the Grail chooses the masters, so Tokiomi explains that the ones who need it the most are selected. But he mentions that it isn't always the case, because the command seal has appeared on people you would never expect to be chosen. After that, Tokiomi is surprised that Karia agreed to work with him so easily, and Rise notes that his son will do anything the church tells him to do. Tokiomi feels bad for him, since he got drawn into a war that has nothing to do with him. But Rise notes that the war might be exactly what he needs, because he just lost his wife. 2 years later, Tokiomi's wife Ai meets with a man named Karia, and her daughter Rin asks him if he brought anything for her, so he gives her a necklace. He wonders where her sister Sakura is, and he's shocked when Ai reveals that she was sent to the Mato family, telling him he already knows what they will do to her. He asks Ai if she's okay with it, so she explains that when she married into the Tosaka family, she knew she wouldn't have a normal family, because it's a clan of mages. At night, Karia meets the head of the Mato family named Zoken, who calls him a failure, reminding him that he didn't want to see him again. We learn that Zoken is his father, and Karia reveals that he knows about Sakura, wondering if it's really that important to keep mages in the lineage. Zoken tells him that if he had carried the name of their family and learned their secrets, they wouldn't be in such a bad position. But he knows that Zoken only wants the Grail so that he can wish for eternal youth. He mentions that they don't have pawns for the 4th Holy Grail War, because unlike Karia, his brother doesn't have the power to control his servant. Zoken notes that even if they forfeit this round, they can still win the next war that will happen in 60 years, because Sakura will bear a powerful mage. But Karia volunteers to participate, telling Zoken to let her go if he wins the war. Zoken reminds him that he hasn't trained a day in his life, so he can't awaken the power to control a servant in just 1 year. But Karia knows that Zoken can make that happen, telling him to implant him with the crest worms. Zoken asks him if he's trying to get himself killed, and notes that it's too late to keep Sakura from getting involved. He takes Karia to her, and reveals that he threw her into a pit of worms, to see how long she would survive, but he's surprised she's still breathing after 12 hours. Karia goes to get her out, but Zoken tells him he can't save her, because she's already broken. But Zoken promises to let her go if Karia wins the war, and he decides to test his resolve by making him the breeding ground of the worms for a week. In the present, Kiritsugu gets a report from the spies he's sent to the London Clock Tower, telling him the Grail has chosen a man named Kenneth Archibald as a master. Kiritsugu thinks he'll be a problem because he's the oldest son of the Archibald family, which has produced 9 generations of mages. We see Kenneth giving a lecture on how lineage is everything in the world of mages, because magical power is passed on to the next generation. He's telling everyone something so simple, because he got a paper from a student named Waver Velvet, who disagrees with it. He explains that according to Waver, anyone can become a mage, and he's disappointed one of his students believes in such nonsense. Waver tries to defend himself, but Kenneth notes that his family has only produced mages for 3 generations, so they're nothing compared to the history of the Mages Association. Waver storms out of the class, and he thinks Kenneth embarrassed him in front of everyone because he's afraid of his talents. But he runs into a man who gives him a package to deliver to Kenneth, telling him to make sure he gets it since it's important. Waver goes to the library, where he realizes that the rumors about Kenneth fighting in a mage tournament are true. He reads about the Holy Grail War and learns that 200 years ago, the 3 first mage families, the Ainsburn, Makiri and Tosaka, worked together to summon the Holy Grail. But their cooperation turned to war when they realized that it could only grant one of their wishes. Since then, the Holy Grail appears in Fuyuki every 60 years, and it selects 7 mages, who are given the power to summon powerful heroic spirits known as servants. These servants fight to the death to determine who's worthy to win the Grail, and he learns that a relic is required to summon one of them. He opens the package and finds a relic inside it, so he decides to keep it for himself. Meanwhile, Kirei goes to meet Tokiomi, who tells Kirei that Kenneth has acquired another relic, so he'll surely participate in the war. Kirei is worried, since they don't know who the last 2 participants are. But Tokiomi tells him not to think about it, because the people who were selected last are usually weak. He asks Kirei if he's sure no one saw him enter the mansion, and he assures him that nobody's watching them. He summons the heroic spirit assassin, who puts their mind at ease, telling them no one can deceive his eyes. Tokiomi tells Kirei he's been investigating the Ainsburn's master, and notes that their family is proud of their pure blood. But 9 years ago, they allowed an outsider mage to marry into the family. He mentions that the Ainsburn mages devoted themselves to alchemy, which is why they've lost all the Holy Grail wars. He thinks they've run out of patience, so they hired Kiritsugu to participate in the war, and Tokiomi thinks he's perfect for the job, because he's known as the Mage Killer. The head of the Ainsburn family tells Kiritsugu and Iri they've found a relic, which will allow him to summon the strongest sword-wielding servant. The head tells Kiritsugu to leave no survivors, and hunt down the other 6 masters. Tokiomi notes that on the surface, Kiritsugu was a rogue mage who didn't belong to the association, but the higher-ups used him for their benefit. Kirei wonders if he's like the executors of the Holy Church, but Tokiomi notes that he's far worse, revealing that he's a freelance assassin who specializes in killing mages. Tokiomi gives his report on Kiritsugu to Kirei, and notes that the laws of the world don't apply to mages, so they need to follow the rules they've made for themselves. But Kiritsugu doesn't have any pride as a mage, so he uses any means necessary to complete his mission. Kirei reads the report, and realizes Kiritsugu only appears in the war zone when the fighting is at its peak. Kirei thinks he's looking for a place to die, and he doesn't think Kiritsugu is after the money, since he seems to have no concept of self-interest. Kiritsugu and Iri go over the 4 masters they know about, and he mentions that Kirei used to study under Tokiomi until his command seals appeared. She's impressed after reading his file, but Kiritsugu wonders why a man like Kirei would work for a secret church organization. She notes that it might be because of his father, but Kiritsugu thinks that if that were the case, he would have gone there from the beginning. He reveals that Kirei changed positions 3 times before getting to the same place as his father, and he was even an executor, which means that he's also hunted down mages. He mentions that Kirei has studied many types of magic, but every time he's about to master one, he leaves it and starts to study something else. Kiritsugu thinks he has no passion for anything, so he wonders why he's risking his life for the Grail, because he doesn't seem to have a wish that he needs granted. Iri thinks he was chosen by the Grail because it knows that he needs something, but Kiritsugu can't understand his goal, thinking that he's a dangerous person. We see that Karia was chosen by the Grail, and Zoken thinks it's because he was able to make progress as a mage. But he stabs Karia's leg, telling him he shouldn't get riled up, because the crest worms inside him will devour him. Zoken thinks he won't survive for more than a month, but he notes that it's all the time he needs, and Zoken gives him a relic as a gift for surviving an entire year. A command seal appears on Waver's hand, which makes him happy, because it means the Grail has recognized his talent. But he knows he can't waste his time, since he needs to prepare to summon his servant. The next day, Waver goes to have breakfast with his grandparents, but they notice the mark on his hand, so he makes them fall asleep. Kiritsugu is surprised to see the legendary Excalibur's scabbard, and he can't believe that even after 1500 years, it's still in excellent condition. So Irie explains that it's a conceptual weapon that doesn't degrade like a physical object. She notes that it heals the wounds of its user and also stops their aging. But it only works when it's provided with the mana of its original owner, so Kiritsugu realizes he can use it to protect himself. He notes that everything is a tool for him, including the servant he'll summon, thinking anyone who lets their fantasies get the better of them will never win the war. She asks him if he doesn't like the relic, but he tells her it's perfect. He believes King Arthur will surely respond to it, and thinks it doesn't matter how compatible he is with the servant. She mentions that the wielder of Excalibur is the strongest saber-class servant, but he isn't sure if he can use its power. She tells him that no matter who he summons, the servant will work with him after learning his ideals, and he tells her he's come up with the perfect strategy. Meanwhile, Kirei sees Rin leaving with a bag, and she tells him she's going to live with the Zenjo family. She asks him to promise to protect her father, but he notes that he can't do that, so she tells him it's why she doesn't like him. She notes that if her father gets hurt, she won't show him mercy, but I arrives, asking her why she's yelling, so Kirei mentions that she's just giving him a pep talk. After that, Kirei goes to meet Tokiomi, who shows him the relic he found, saying it's the fossil of the very first skin shed by a snake on this world. He notes that if they use it as a catalyst to summon the servant thereafter, their victory will be guaranteed. Karia runs into Sakura, who realizes there's something wrong with his face, and he mentions that he lost a part of it to the worms, telling her he isn't as strong as her. She notes that Zoken told her she doesn't need to go to the worm pit today, because there's an important ceremony. She asks him if he's leaving, so he tells her he has an important job to do, asking her if he wants to go somewhere fun with her mother and sister. But she mentions that Zoken told her to think of them like they never existed, and Karia promises to help her escape from the Mono family. He meets with Zoken, who mentions that they'll add 2 more lines to the summoning spell. He knows that Karia's rank as a mage is lower than the other masters, so his servant's base abilities will be affected. Zoken explains that they need to select the servant class they can modify to boost those abilities, and he tells Karia to add the Berserker affinity to the servant he'll summon. The other masters also prepare to summon their servants, but Irie is surprised that only a simple ritual is required. Kiritsugu explains that the Grail will summon the servant, so they just need to anchor the spirit to the world, and give it enough mana to take physical form. All the masters start the summoning spell, which causes their magic circles to activate, and they chant an incantation, which causes the servants to appear before them. After that, Waver goes with his servant Ryder, the incarnation of Alexander the Great, to steal some books. But he yells at Ryder as he breaks the shutter, asking him why he didn't use his spirit form to get out, so he tells Waver he can't carry the books in that form. He gets angry and tells Ryder to go away, so he disappears, and Waver starts running away, but he wonders why Ryder told him to steal the books. So Ryder tells him they need maps to prepare for war, asking him where Macedonia and Persia are. He tells Ryder he can't talk to him that way, because he's just a servant, but Waver becomes scared as Ryder stares at him. He tells Waver he knows about their pact, but he wants to know what happened to his territories. So Waver points to them on the map, which makes Ryder laugh, because he realizes that the lands he spent his whole life conquering were so small. Ryder notes that they'll go to the other side of the world, and conquer everything that comes in their way. He'll return to Macedonia after they're done, where his people will throw a festival to celebrate his return, but Waver tells him he shouldn't forget about the Holy Grail War. He wonders why Waver wants to win the war, telling him it would be a problem if he also plans to conquer the world, but he explains that he just wants everyone to treat him fairly. Ryder slaps him, telling him his goal is stupid, because he's only concerned about his own reputation. He tells Waver that if he wants people to fear him, he should ask the Grail to increase his height. Waver becomes angry hearing this, and prepares to use his command seal on Ryder. But he stops himself, because he knows that the seal can only be used 3 times to make Ryder obey him, so he can't use them carelessly. Ryder knows that Waver wants to see his power, and Waver notes that he needs to know if he can rely on him. So Ryder slashes his sword, which makes an ox chariot appear from the sky, revealing that it's the one that was once offered to Zeus. Meanwhile, Kiritsugu plays with his daughter Ilya, which surprises his servant Saber because she thought he was a cold person. Irie wonders if she's still bothered by what happened during her summoning, and she reveals that she pretended to be a boy during her life. But she wasn't expecting them to be so shocked when they found out the truth, wondering if Kiritsugu underestimates her abilities since she's a woman. But Irie tells her he's angry at the people around her, who were cruel enough to make a little girl their king. Saber explains that there was nothing anyone could do about it, since she was the one who pulled out the sword from the stone. She thinks Kiritsugu doesn't have the right to judge the decisions made at that time, but Irie mentions that it's why he doesn't say anything. Saber notes that their goal of saving the world is similar to her own, revealing that she wants to protect Britain, since she couldn't do it during her own time. Ilya asks Kiritsugu when he and Irie will return, and he mentions that he'll be back soon, but Irie will be away for a long time. She notes that her mother told her that even if she isn't with her, she'll always be by her side, so Ilya thinks she won't be lonely because she'll be with Irie forever. But he hugs her, telling her to wait for him, and he promises to return to her as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, we meet a boy named Ryunosuke as he talks with a kid that's gagged, and we learn that Ryunosuke killed his parents. Ryunosuke reveals that he found a book and realized his ancestor was studying demons, so he's trying to summon one of them. The kid starts to panic when Ryunosuke tells him to let the demon kill him, but a command seal suddenly appears on his hand, and the servant caster appears before him. He tells Ryunosuke to introduce himself, so he reveals that he's a murderer who likes to kill kids and women. Caster agrees to form a contract with him, revealing that his goal is to get the Holy Grail, but Ryunosuke has no idea what he's talking about. He wonders if Caster wants to eat the kid, but he sets him free, so Ryunosuke is disappointed. But before the kid can leave, Caster's monster suddenly eats him. Ryunosuke thinks he's cool, and notes that he doesn't know what Grail Caster is talking about. But he looks forward to working with him, telling him they should kill people together, and Caster is happy that his master is just like him. Meanwhile, the church tells Kirai that the war has begun since the last servant has been summoned. So he orders Assassin to go to the Tosaka mansion and eliminate Tokiomi. He manages to dodge the traps set around the mansion, but as he's about to disable the barrier, Tokiomi's servant Gilgamesh suddenly rains weapons at him, killing him in an instant. Gilgamesh is annoyed that Tokiomi is wasting his time, but he tells Gilgamesh that his actions have just strengthened his title as the King of Heroes. Tokiomi explains that they'll learn who their enemies are, so he tells Gilgamesh to wait a bit longer. He notes that if he can't find a treasure he likes, he'll make Tokiomi pay for summoning him, but Tokiomi assures him he'll like the Holy Grail. After he leaves, Tokiomi still can't believe he was able to summon Gilgamesh, and thinks everything has gone according to his plan, thinking he can allow Kirai to take care of things. Waver tells Ryder that Assassin has been defeated, but he has no interest in it. So Waver yells at him, telling him he's been collecting information, while Ryder does nothing but eat and watch TV. Ryder notes that Assassin wouldn't have been a challenge for him, so he doesn't care if he was defeated, and he's more interested in the fighter jets he's seen on TV. Waver thinks Ryder can defeat the other servants, but he's worried about Caster, since they don't know his identity. Ryder wonders who defeated Assassin, so Waver mentions that it was Tokiomi's servant. He reveals that he didn't see it clearly, since it was at night, and the fight was over in an instant. So Ryder flicks his head, telling him he should have paid attention, because they will need to fight them. Ryder reveals that a servant only has one noble phantasm, and explains that it's the physical manifestation of the hero's legend. Waver wonders if a noble phantasm can allow a hero to throw multiple swords at their opponent, and Ryder thinks it's possible. He explains that a sword splitting into different copies can be considered one noble phantasm, but Waver mentions that the swords were all different. Ryder notes that they shouldn't worry about it, because they'll learn the identities of their opponents when they face them. He tells Waver they should go outside, since he knows that all the other masters will start fighting soon, so he thinks he'll run into them. Waver notes that it won't be that easy, but Ryder mentions that he's the fastest among all the servants. He prepares to use his sword to show his power, but Waver stops him, because it will blow up the house. Kirai goes to the church, telling Rise he won't be able to continue in the war, because he lost his servant. Rise allows him to stay at the church, telling him no one is watching because the place is a neutral sanctuary, but Kirei orders another assassin to keep watch. He asks her about the people who watched the fight in the Tosaka mansion, so she mentions that she felt the presence of familiars from 4 different masters. We learn that he was hoping that all the other masters would have watched the fight, but even more assassins appear, and they mention that if a master didn't even think to watch the fight, they shouldn't need to worry about them. We see Irie coming out of a plane with Saber, asking her if she enjoyed her first flight, but she notes that it wasn't anything special. She reveals that when a servant is summoned, they get all the knowledge of the current world, so she could even fly the plane. She explains that her riding skill allows her to command any beast or vehicle, except for phantasmal or divine beasts. As they sit in their car, Saber mentions that Kiritsugu has already arrived, and Irie wants to explore Japan before the fighting starts, but Saber doesn't think it's a good idea. She thinks they should secure a base of operations, and Irie notes that she got excited because it's her first time outside the castle, which surprises Saber. So she tells the driver to stop the car, telling Irie they should walk through the city. Kiritsugu meets with a girl named Maya, who shows him all the equipment he ordered. She notes that Irie and Saber have arrived, telling him their enemies will think Irie is Saber's master. She shows him the fight at the Tosaka mansion, and notes that Assassin has a skill that allows him to hide his presence. So he couldn't have been detected that easily, which makes her think Tokiomi was expecting an intruder, but Kiritsugu wonders why he exposed the identity of his servant. He wonders what happened to Kirei, so she reveals that he spent the night at the church, where Rise declared him under his protection. Kiritsugu tells her to make sure a familiar is watching the church, but she asks him if he's sure, because masters are forbidden to act in the neutral zone. So he tells her to set the familiar far from the church, where no one will be able to see it. As he checks the weapons, he starts to think about Ilya, but Maya kisses him, telling him to focus on the task at hand. Saber takes Irie to a beach, and she asks Saber if she likes the sea. But she notes that during her time, it was the source of constant attacks, which makes Irie feel sad for her, realizing she couldn't enjoy simple things as King Arthur. Saber wonders if Irie would have been happier if Kiritsugu was with her, but she thinks it would only cause him suffering. So Saber wonders if he dislikes spending time with her, and Irie mentions that it causes him pain when he's happy. They suddenly sense another servant called Lancer, and Saber notes that he intentionally revealed his presence, so she thinks he's inviting them to fight him. They decide to accept his invitation, and he tells them he's been going around the city looking for a fight, but they're the only ones who accepted his offer. Saber puts on her armor as she prepares to fight him, and Irie tells her to be careful, telling her she can only support her with healing magic. Saber notes she'll take care of him, but she's worried since his master isn't with him, thinking they're up to something. She realizes that he's using a charm spell, but he notes that he can't control it, since it's a curse he was born with. He realizes it isn't working on her, so he thinks the tales about the Saber class's resistance to magic are true, which makes him happy, because he wants to have a fair fight. She charges in, and tries to hit him with her sword, but he's able to block her attack. Kiritsugu watches the fight from the shadows, and he realizes that someone put up a barrier, so he thinks it must be Lancer's master. Maya thinks they should go to the crane, because it's the best vantage point, but he mentions that everyone will be thinking the same thing. So he tells her to find another spot, where they can monitor both the fight and the crane. Saber and Lancer continue to fight, but no one manages to land a hit, and Irie thinks Lancer has the advantage, because Saber doesn't know which of his 2 spears he'll use to attack. She thinks if she knew which spear is his noble phantasm, she could easily attack him. He asks her why she's on the defensive, but she rushes towards him, and manages to scratch his face. He's annoyed by her invisible sword, because he can't attack her freely without knowing its actual size. Kiritsugu sees Lancer's master, but before he can pull the trigger, he suddenly gets distracted by a gust of wind, and realizes that Assassin is also there. Kirei watches the battle through the assassin's eyes, and he reports to Tokiomi, telling him that Saber's abilities are superior, so Tokiomi thinks she's a bigger threat than Lancer. Kirei notes that Irie is the only one in the open, and Tokiomi mentions that Lancer's master made a wise move by hiding while his servant is fighting. Kirei describes Irie's appearance, but notes that she doesn't look human because she has red eyes and silver hair. So Tokiomi wonders if the Einsburn family made an artificial master, and he tells Kirei to watch her, because she'll be an important part of the war. Meanwhile, Maya wonders how Assassin got there, because he's supposed to be dead, and she asks for Kiritsugu's permission to attack him. She offers to distract him, while Kiritsugu takes out Lancer's master, but he stops her, because they aren't equipped to fight a servant. Lancer praises Saber for her fighting skills, but he hears his master's voice, telling him to fight seriously. He allows him to use his noble phantasm, so Lancer puts down one of his spears. He knows Saber is hiding her sword, because it will give away her real name, but she notes she'll defeat him before he can see it. He attacks her with his spear, and as she blocks it, she's surprised as her sword is revealed for a moment. He continues to attack her, and she barely manages to dodge his spear. He notes that he has figured out the length of her sword, so he can attack her freely without the fear of being hit. She comes up with a plan to let her armor deflect his attack, so that she can take advantage of the opening and finish him off. But as she tries it, she's surprised as his spear passes through her armor, and Irie quickly heals her. She sees that her armor didn't get damaged, so she realizes that his spear can negate magic. He notes that if she were thinking about using her magic to protect herself, she should just give up. She takes off her armor, and he's impressed that she's taking a huge risk, but he tells her she's making a bad decision. As they prepare to rush towards each other, he suddenly slips, so she uses the opportunity to charge in, but he kicks up his other spear, and they both end up hitting each other. Meanwhile, Ryder notes that Lancer used his ultimate attack, so the fight will be over soon. But he notes that there aren't a lot of chances to fight heroes from another time, so he can't let any of them die, revealing that he wants to fight all of them. He swings his sword towards the sky, which makes the ox chariot appear, and he tells Waver to stay back, because he doesn't want to fight, but he decides to join Ryder. Lancer's master heals him, and Saber tells Irie to do the same, but she's confused because even though she already healed Saber, her wound is still bleeding. He tells Saber she made a mistake by removing her armor, saying it would have blocked his second spear, and she realizes it's cursed, so it can inflict wounds that never heal. After seeing his abilities, she realizes he's Diarmuid, the first of the Knights of Fianna, and she's honored to fight him. But he tells her the honor is his, because he knows that she's the King of Knights. He notes that they can have a proper duel, since they both know each other's name. But as they're about to continue their fight, Ryder suddenly appears before them, and introduces himself as the King of Conquerors. He tells them to give him the Grail and join his army, saying they can conquer the world together, but they both refuse his offer. He offers to pay them, but they aren't interested, and Saber mentions that she's the King of Britain, so she'll never work for him. He's surprised that the King of Knights is a girl, and Kiritsugu can't believe an idiot like Ryder nearly conquered the world. We see that Lancer's master is Kenneth, who notes that he wondered why Waver stole his relic, but he never imagined that Waver planned to enter the Holy Grail War. Waver starts to lose his mind after hearing his voice, but Ryder calms him down, telling Kenneth his master can only be the person who's brave enough to ride with him. He thinks Kenneth isn't worthy to be his master, since he's a coward that's hiding himself. Ryder knows that other heroic spirits are watching from the shadows, so he tells them to come out, and Gilgamesh decides to show himself. He's annoyed that lesser beings are calling themselves kings in his presence, telling them he's the one true king, so Ryder tells him to reveal his name. But he notes that if Ryder can't figure out his identity after seeing him, he deserves to die. Gilgamesh uses his noble phantasm to summon countless weapons, but before he can attack, Karia summons his servant Berserker. Ryder tells Waver to check Berserker's stats, but Waver notes that he can't see anything about him, and Saber mentions that Berserker has a curse or a special ability, which conceals everything about him. Gilgamesh doesn't like Berserker looking at him, so he fires two of his swords, but Berserker is unharmed, and Ryder is surprised by how fast he is. He reveals that Berserker caught the first sword Gilgamesh fired at him, and used it to block the spear. Gilgamesh is angry that he touched his treasure, and he summons even more weapons, which he rains down onto Berserker, but he manages to block all of them and throws two of them back at him, so Gilgamesh becomes even angrier. So he prepares to attack with even more of his weapons, but Tokiomi uses his command seal to order Gilgamesh to retreat, because he doesn't want everyone to see his full power. After he leaves, Berserker suddenly grabs a pole and attacks Saber, and Ryder realizes that any weapon that Berserker holds becomes his noble phantasm, and Saber struggles to keep up with him since her hand is still injured. He's about to hit her, but Lancer suddenly comes to her rescue because he wants to finish his fight with her, telling Berserker he will need to fight him if he wants to interfere. He asks for Kenneth's permission to fight Berserker before he kills Saber, but Kenneth uses his command seal and instead orders him to help Berserker take out Saber. She prepares to fight them, telling Irie to escape, but she tells Saber to have faith in her master, so she realizes that Kiritsugu is also there. He knows that their only hope of winning is if he eliminates Kenneth. But before he can pull the trigger, Ryder runs into Berserker with his ox chariot, forcing him to retreat. He tells Kenneth to withdraw with Lancer, telling him he'll work with Saber to defeat them if they continue to fight, so Kenneth has no choice but to order Lancer to retreat. Ryder also decides to leave, telling Saber to finish her duel with Lancer because he wants to fight the winner of their battle. Irie thanks Saber for protecting her, but she notes that the only reason she could fight was because Irie was with her. Meanwhile, Karia is happy that he made Tokiomi withdraw Gilgamesh, but he starts to cough up blood as he notes that Berserker broke free from his control. He realizes that it made his body weaker, but he thinks he can win the war if he can control Berserker. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke is excited after watching the fight, but Castor starts to cry after he sees Saber, calling her the girl of his dreams. Irie and Saber go for a drive, and Irie is excited since she's never driven a car outside the castle, but Saber tells her to stop as Castor appears in front of them. He kneels before Saber, telling her he has come for her, which makes Irie wonder if she knows him, but she notes that she has never seen him before. He tries to make her remember who he is, calling her Jean, but she tells him her real name, and he thinks she has lost her memories, so he starts to lose it. He tells her the war has ended, and the Grail has chosen him without any fighting, because his wish for Saber to be resurrected has already been fulfilled. She gets angry and slashes the ground around him, telling him she'll cut him down if he continues to mock her. So he decides to retreat, but he promises to free her from God's curse. She's relieved that he decided to leave, because she didn't think she could defeat him, since she still can't use her left hand. As they leave, we see two assassins watching them, and they continue to follow them. Ryunosuke is nailing people to the wall, but Castor smashes one of their heads in anger, since he thinks Saber can't remember her real self. He's determined to prove to her that no crime is worth God's punishment, so they need to do even more horrible things. He tells Ryunosuke they should start by killing the 11 people they have in their cells, and kidnap more children for them to play with. Kenneth asks Lancer why he didn't eliminate Saber, and scolds him for making him waste one of his command seals. So Lancer promises to bring him Saber's head, but Kenneth notes that he doesn't need to promise anything, since they've already made a pact. Kenneth's fiancée Sola tells him that he was the one who made mistakes, so he notes that Saber is a powerful servant, and he couldn't allow a chance to defeat her pass him by. But she mentions that Lancer gave her a wound that can't be healed, so they can eliminate her at any time. She reminds him that he has an advantage over the other masters, because he altered the master-servant pact. So he has the command seals, but he can also tap into her mana supply. She tells him that if he was so worried about Saber, he should have done something instead of hiding in the shadows. But Lancer tells her to stop, because he can't allow her to insult his master, so she apologizes for her actions, and Kenneth realizes she's been affected by Lancer's charm spell. He gets a call, and realizes a fire has broken out on the lower levels, so he thinks Saber and her master are attacking them. He thinks they want to lift the spear's curse from her arm, so he tells Lancer to finish her off. Outside the building, Kiritsugu tells the guards that Kenneth and Sola have already evacuated, and after he confirms that everyone else is safe, he blows up the building. He thinks no one could have survived the blast, so he tells Maya to retreat, but he's shocked when he realizes that Kirei is at her position. He shows her the familiar he found watching the church, asking her where Kiritsugu is, but she doesn't say anything and starts to shoot him. He knocks the gun out of her hand, and as he tries to get close to her, she escapes using a smoke bomb. But he knows she wasn't the one who threw it, and he notes that the knowledge that someone came to save her is enough for him. An assassin tells him he has found Castor, and Kirei reports to Tokiomi that Castor and Ryunosuke have been kidnapping children. He tells him they're the serial killers everyone's been getting worked up over, and mentions that they use magic without hesitation. Kirei notes that they don't hide their tracks, so their goal may be different from winning the war, but he thinks they can't ignore them, since their actions are against the rules. Tokiomi notes that he can't allow them to continue, since he needs to protect the secrets of magic. But Kiritsugu notes that he can't use his assassin to eliminate them, and they need a servant to defeat Castor, so Risei mentions that the church will make all the masters work together to take them out. After that, as Kiritsugu returns to the church, he sees Gilgamesh in his room, telling him he responded to Tokiomi's summoning spell because it was worthy of his attention. But he never thought Tokiomi would be such a boring person, revealing that he doesn't like his goal of reaching the vortex of the root. Kiritsugu mentions that the desire to reach the root is only for mages, and notes that those who wish to escape the world are the only ones looking for it. But Gilgamesh explains that he isn't interested in it, since he already likes the world as it is. Kiritsugu notes that the Grail isn't designed to find the root, but reveals that it can change the world, so Gilgamesh realizes that the other masters have different motives for needing the Grail. He wonders why Kiritsugu is after the Grail, and he explains that he has no desire for it, but Gilgamesh finds it hard to believe, because the Grail only calls those who are worthy of it. Kiritsugu notes that he has no ideals or desires, so Gilgamesh tells him to wish for joy, but he notes that he can't go after something so sinful. Gilgamesh doesn't understand why he thinks joy is sinful, telling him it can only be called a sin if it's achieved through evil deeds. Kiritsugu notes that joy is something he seeks, but he never finds it, and Gilgamesh tells him it's a form of the soul. He explains that the reason Kiritsugu can't find it is because he doesn't know anything about his soul. He thinks Gilgamesh shouldn't give him a lecture, because he's just a servant, but he tells Kiritsugu to listen to his words, because he has tasted all the pleasures the world has to offer. He tells Kiritsugu to look for entertainment, and he mentions that he doesn't have time for that, but Gilgamesh invites Kiritsugu to join him whenever he has time. He knows that Kiritsugu is watching the other masters, so he asks him to find their motivation for joining the war, and Kiritsugu agrees to do it, but mentions that it will take time. After Gilgamesh leaves, Kiritsugu notes that he talked too much in front of him, and wonders if he'll be able to find what he truly desires if he learns more about Kiritsugu. Risei tells everyone that Castor's master is behind the recent kidnapping in the city, and he uses his emergency powers as overseer to change the rules. He orders all the masters to defeat Castor before fighting each other, promising to give an additional command seal to the one who eliminates him. After that, he tells Tokiomi that 5 familiars were present during his announcement, which means Kenneth is still alive. Risei thinks he'll show himself, since he needs to replace the command seal he used. Tokiomi knows that the master who gets the command seal will have an advantage, so Risei notes that when the other servants weaken Castor, Gilgamesh must land the final blow. The next day, a delivery man gives Ryder the package he ordered, but Waver yells at him, reminding him to stay on the 2nd floor, but he notes that no one was there to answer the door. Waver explains that he was busy because he received a call from the Holy Church. But Ryder tells him not to worry, and notes that after seeing Saber, he realized that he can go outside without making anyone suspicious if he wears modern clothes. Waver tells him he needs to wear pants before going outside, but he refuses to buy anything for Ryder until he defeats a servant, so he agrees to do it. Meanwhile, Kiritsugu shows Irie the 4 places where the Grail can appear, and she notes that when the number of servants becomes lower, they need to secure one of the 4 places as their base of operations. She wonders if all the other masters will go after Castor, and he notes that they have an advantage, because Castor believes Saber is Jean, so they just need to wait for him to come for her. She thinks they should bring the fight to him, because he needs to be punished for his evil deeds, but Kiritsugu falls silent. Irie mentions that it's been 18 hours since he blew up Kenneth, but Saber's wounds still hasn't healed. So she realizes that Lancer is still alive, wondering if they should defeat him before Saber fights Castor. Kiritsugu thinks it isn't necessary, and tells her to use her understanding of the area to keep Castor away from Saber, while he attacks the others who are hunting Castor. Saber becomes angry hearing this, and yells at him for sinking to such a low level. Irie reminds him that Risei has called for a temporary truce, so they aren't allowed to attack the others. But he thinks they can't trust him, because he's hiding Kiritsugu in the church, and Kiritsugu believes he's working with Tokiomi. At night, Kiritsugu asks Irie if she'll come with him if he decides to abandon everything, but she's worried about Ilya, so he assures her he'll come back for her. He notes that there's still time for them to leave, but she hugs him, telling him she knows he can't run away, because he won't forgive himself for failing to save the world. He admits that he's scared, because he knows that Kiritsugu is after him. He knows that Kiritsugu used Kenneth as bait to lure him out, but she promises to protect him. Irie uses a crystal ball to look around the area, and she sees Castor, who's trying to lure them out by bringing children, but she realizes that he knows they're watching him. He tells the children to hide, and kills one of them, telling them he'll do the same to the ones who can't hide from him, so Irie tells Saber to stop him. Saber runs into Castor, who has found another kid, but he lets him go. The kid hugs Saber, but his body bursts into pieces as a monster appears. It grabs onto her, but she manages to break free and rushes towards Castor, destroying all the monsters in her way, but they keep regenerating. Irie thinks he doesn't have unlimited mana, so if Saber can survive until his mana runs out, she'll win the fight. But Kiritsugu is more interested in seeing if any other masters have entered the forest, and he tells Maya to take Irie away. But before she leaves, she senses that someone else has entered the forest. Saber wonders why Castor's mana isn't running out, and she notices a grimoire in his hand, realizing it's his noble phantasm. He mentions that it was given to him by his master, and it allows him to command a demonic legion. After seeing her spirit, he's even more sure that she's Jean, but he doesn't understand why she doesn't remember anything. The monster manages to grab her, but Lancer comes to her rescue, because he wants to be the one who defeats her. Castor becomes angry hearing this, and notes that his wish brought her back to life, so she belongs to him. Lancer notes that he isn't going to stop Castor from going after Saber, but he won't allow him to defeat her when she's injured. He tells her he's there because he was ordered to defeat Castor, so they decide to work together. Meanwhile, Kenneth enters the castle and challenges Kiritsugu to a duel, but he doesn't respond, so Kenneth decides to look for him. He runs into traps set by Kiritsugu, but his mercury ball protects him, and he manages to find Kiritsugu. He attacks him, but Kiritsugu manipulates his inner time to double his speed, and manages to get away, as Kenneth realizes that he knows how to use magic. He uses his mercury ball to look for him, but Kiritsugu slows down his heartbeat by manipulating his internal time, thinking the mercury ball won't be able to sense him, since it doesn't have eyes. Kenneth continues to search for him, but Kiritsugu suddenly opens fire, so Kenneth uses the mercury ball to defend himself. He tells Kiritsugu he's wasting his time, but he smiles as he takes out his revolver. As Irie and Maya get away from the castle, Irie senses that Kirai has also entered the forest. She mentions that even though Maya's orders are to get her to safety, they need to make sure he doesn't reach the castle, because he's the greatest threat to Kiritsugu. So she tells Maya to do what's necessary, instead of just following orders. In the castle, Kiritsugu fires his revolver, and it manages to get through Kenneth's defense and hit him. Kiritsugu uses the chance to get away, and Kenneth becomes angry, thinking he let his guard down. He starts to look for Kiritsugu, who knows that the next time he shoots the bullet, Kenneth will use all of his mana to defend, but that's exactly what he needs him to do. Meanwhile, Kirai is under attack, so he throws knives in the direction that the bullets are coming from, but there's no one there. So he wonders if it was just an illusion, but Maya suddenly hits him from behind. She tries to get close to him, thinking he's dead, but he hits her leg with a knife and rushes towards her. She opens fire, but he blocks her bullets, so she starts to fight with her knife, but he disarms her and pins her to the ground. Irie comes out of hiding, telling him she knows he's after Kiritsugu, but she won't allow Kirai to reach him. Maya tells her he's an expert at killing mages, so normal magic won't work on him, but Irie notes that Kiritsugu taught her how to survive. She uses magic threads to make a bird, which ties Kirai's hand together, and as he rushes towards her, she pins him to a tree, telling Maya to finish him off, but she's shocked as he breaks the tree in half. Meanwhile, Lancer is surprised that the monsters keep coming, and Saber mentions that it's because of Castor's noble phantasm. But he notes that they need to get through the monsters to reach Castor, so she tells him she has a plan. She thrusts her sword to create an opening for Lancer, who rushes forward and stabs the grimoire, causing the monsters to blow up. But before they can defeat Castor, a red fog suddenly appears, and he uses it to escape. Lancer senses that Kenneth is in danger because he went to the castle alone, and she thinks he must be fighting Kiritsugu, so she tells Lancer to help him. In the castle, Kenneth keeps running into traps, which makes him annoyed because he didn't sign up for the war to fight a battle like this, but he finally manages to find Kiritsugu. He tells Kiritsugu he just landed a lucky shot, telling him he'll make him suffer before ending his life. Kiritsugu shoots his revolver again, but Kenneth is ready for it, and focuses his mercury ball to stop the bullet. But in a flashback, We see a woman telling Kiritsugu she powdered his ribs and put it into the bullets, telling him his origin will materialize if anything is shot by it. She notes that it's powerful against mages, because even if they use magic against it, his origin will destroy their magic circuits, which will reconnect him properly. Kenneth is hit by the effects of the bullet, and as he lies helplessly on the ground, Lancer comes to his rescue. But he decides to leave Kiritsugu alive, because he still wants to continue his duel with Saber. We see Kirei grabbing Irie, asking her who ordered her to attack him. He knows she isn't a master, since she doesn't have any command seals, and he thinks she's a homunculus charged with protecting the Grail vessel, so she shouldn't be on the front lines. An assassin tells him Castor and Lancer have already left the forest, and Saber is coming towards them, so he stabs Irie before leaving. He wonders if Irie and Maya fought him without being ordered by anyone, but he thinks it's impossible. Saber arrives, telling Irie to hold on until Kiritsugu gets there, but she's shocked to see that her wounds have already healed. In a flashback, we see that Kiritsugu told Irie to carry Saber's scabbard Avalon, which heals its user's wounds, but she notes that he should be the one to keep it. So he explains that it won't work until Saber is near it to supply mana, and he tells her she shouldn't reveal it to anyone. We return to the present, as Irie heals Maya, and she realizes that Kirei is even more dangerous than she thought. She thinks she's lucky she survived, and she isn't sure what will happen next, but she knows that she can't let him reach Kiritsugu. Kenneth dreams about Lancer's past, where he was in love with the king's daughter Grianne, but she had already been married to a man named Fian. Lancer defeats all of his enemies, and he tells Grianne that Fian has accepted their marriage. But Fian never forgot about her, so he ended up betraying Lancer. Kenneth wakes up, but he doesn't remember what happened to him, and he wonders why Sola has him tied up. So she explains that every magic circuit in his body misfired, telling him she managed to regenerate all of his organs, but his magic circuits were destroyed. So he won't be able to use magic anymore, but she tells him not to give up, because if the Holy Grail is really an omnipotent wish-granting device, they can use it to heal him. She tells him to give her his command seals, so that she can become Lancer's master, and he wonders if Lancer will swear loyalty to her. But she thinks that won't be a problem, since his goal is the same as theirs. He tells her Lancer isn't the man she thinks he is, because when he asked Lancer about his wish, he said he has no desire for the Grail, so Kenneth thinks he's hiding something. But he knows that as long as he has the command seals, Lancer needs to obey him. He refuses to give her the command seals, so she breaks one of his fingers, threatening to cut his arm if he doesn't give her what she wants. Meanwhile, Irie goes to report this situation to Kiritsugu, and Saber asks her to tell him they should go after Castor immediately, or innocent children will lose their lives. He tells Irie he's going after Kenneth, and she wonders if he's angry at Saber because she didn't stop Lancer. So he notes that Saber was sure Lancer wasn't going to attack him, but if he had betrayed her, their war would have ended at that moment. He knows that Saber wants to defeat Castor, but he explains that their goal is bigger than just saving a few children. Sola meets with Lancer, telling him Kenneth isn't worthy to be his master, since the war was too much for him to handle. She shows Lancer the command seals on her hand, telling him she'll be his new master, but he refuses to accept it, because his loyalty is with Kenneth. He notes that if Kenneth can't continue in the war, he has no interest in fighting for the Grail. He prepares to leave, but she mentions that if he feels responsible for what happened to Kenneth, he needs to bring the Holy Grail to him. He asks her if that's her only goal, and she assures him that she's only fighting to heal Kenneth, so he agrees to continue participating in the war. As he sees the look in her eyes, he remembers Grianne, and thinks about how the only thing he seeks is the loyalty that was denied to him during his past life. Saber tells Irie she fought in countless battles during her previous life, and there were times when she had to ignore the lives lost. So she understands what Kiritsugu is thinking, but she mentions that the Holy Grail War is supposed to be held in secret, to make sure there's no unnecessary bloodshed. She notes that if Kiritsugu didn't fight with Kenneth, she and Lancer would have defeated Castor, but Irie reminds her about Kiritsugu's goal to make the world a better place. Meanwhile, Ryder drinks beer with Waver's grandfather, who reveals that they were worried about Waver, but they're happy he made a friend, and he notes that he's in Waver's debt, showing them the pants that Waver bought for him. After they go to his room, Waver reminds Ryder that he told him to be in his spiritual form, but he mentions that Waver was the one who told him to collect water from the river. Waver performs tests on the water, and realizes someone used magic near it, thinking they'll find the person if they follow the trail. He keeps performing tests and manages to find Castor's laboratory, which impresses Ryder because he did something so impressive using such a simple method. Ryder thinks they should attack Castor immediately, but Waver stops him, telling him Castor has the advantage because they'd be going into his territory. Ryder notes that in war, an enemy's location can change at any time, so they shouldn't waste the chance when they know where to attack. He mentions that he's eager to fight because Waver has finally done something impressive, so as a servant, he needs to do his duty and defeat the enemy. They go to Castor's hideout, but he isn't there, so Waver thinks they should look around to find clues, but Ryder warns him against it. Waver refuses to listen, and he lights up the area, but he's horrified when he sees the bodies of the children. Ryder tells him it's a normal reaction, and Waver wonders why he isn't reacting at all, so he explains that it isn't the time for him to show emotions, because they're being attacked. Ryder kills their attacker, and Waver is shocked that it's Assassin, because he's supposed to be dead, but Ryder tells him they shouldn't let their guards down. They get surrounded by more assassins, who decide to retreat instead of attacking, and Ryder thinks they should leave as well. Ryder mentions that they should destroy everything, so he sets the place on fire, and as they leave on the chariot, he tells Waver that Castor doesn't have any place left to hide, so they'll defeat him soon. At the church, Tokiomi tells Kirei he shouldn't feel bad about exposing Assassin, because they learn that Ryder's master is a third-class mage, and he tells Kirei to keep watching them. In a flashback, we see Rin trying to perform a spell, but she starts to cry when she fails to complete it. But Tokiomi appears behind her, telling her she failed because she used too much mana. He tells her to calm her mind, since it's the most important step in using magic. He completes the spell, which surprises her, and she asks him to teach her how he did it. So he mentions that it will be difficult for her at the moment, but he tells her she'll be able to achieve it if she keeps working hard. At the school, a girl named Koto is being bullied, and Rin comes to her rescue, but the bullies tell her she shouldn't interfere. She dares them to bully her as well, but they run off instead. She tells Koto to stand up for herself, telling her she should get angry when someone else is in the wrong, and she's amazed at how Rin can always speak her mind. Back at the house, Tokiomi tells Rin she needs to live with the Zenjos, because after the Holy War starts, it will be dangerous for them to stay in Fuyuki. She wants to help him, and wonders if he's sending her away since she'll just get in the way, but he explains that he needs to prepare for the war and ensure her safety. At night, Rin decides to study on her own, thinking she can help her father as she learns to do magic, but as she tries to read a few books, she doesn't understand anything. There are hands that grab her from one of the books, but Tokiomi saves her just in time, telling her that it's too early for her to read it. He gives her a mana compass, telling her it usually doesn't point to anything unless there are traces of magic around it. He tells her to use mana to show her how the compass works, and he points it at the book she was trying to read, causing it to react. He tells her that if the compass reacts like that to anything, it means the object isn't something she can handle. At the school, Rin is worried about Koto since she isn't in class, and after she hears that one of their classmates was killed, she tries calling Koto's home to make sure she's okay, but no one answers. At night, she goes around Fuyuki trying to look for Koto, but the compass starts to go crazy, so she realizes that there are traces of magic all around her. She walks by a dark alley, where she sees Rinnosuke with a kid, so she decides to follow them. But she's scared when a police car passes by, because she knows they'll take her back home if she's spotted. She once again sees Rinnosuke, but she's surprised that he has another kid with him, and instead of hiding, she decides to follow the mana compass. She reaches an underground room, where she finds Koto unconscious, but as she tries to help her, Rinnosuke suddenly arrives. She gets away from him, and realizes he's using the bracelet on his arm to control the kids, so she grabs it and starts using mana to destroy it, but it's too strong for her to handle. She's about to fall under his control, but she snaps out of it, and destroys the bracelet, freeing the other kids from his control. She takes them all to safety, and as she decides to return home, the mana compass starts acting up again. One of Castor's monsters falls from the sky, which shocks her, and she falls unconscious as a man appears in front of her. Ai finds Rin unconscious on a bench, and she sees Karia with her, but she wonders what happened to his face, so he explains that it's the price he paid for using the Mono family's magic. He assures Ai that he'll prevent Sakura from becoming like him, telling her that Zoken won't need her if he gets the Grail. He plans to win it for him, so that Zoken will release Sakura, but before he leaves, he hopes that all of them will play together in the park like they used to. They're being watched by Assassin, who asks Kirei if he's sure about letting Ai and Ring go, but he tells Assassin to just keep watching Karia. At the castle, Irie senses Ryder is attacking them, thinking he waited for Kiritsugu to leave before coming. Ryder enters the castle, and Saber asks him what he's doing there, so he tells her he came to have a drink with her. She takes him to the garden, where he mentions that if all the heroic spirits decide their rankings among themselves, there won't be any need for them to fight. She realizes that he wants to compare his ranking with her, and he notes that by the time they're finished drinking, it will be clear who's more worthy of the Holy Grail. Gilgamesh joins them, and Ryder reveals that he invited him as well, but Gilgamesh is disappointed they're having the Banquet of Kings in such a depressing place. Ryder offers him a drink, but he doesn't like it, so he brings out his own wine, which they all find incredible. He mentions that the quality of the drink should tell them who's the best king amongst them, but Ryder notes that the Holy Grail isn't a drinking cup, asking him what wish he wants the Grail to grant. But he tells them the Grail already belongs to him, because all the treasures in the world trace their origin to his treasury. So Ryder thinks he should know what it looks like, but he notes that the amount of treasures he owns is beyond his knowledge, and Saber thinks that he has also gone mad like Castor. Gilgamesh mentions that he has no interest in the Grail, but since it's his treasure, he needs to judge the people who are going after it. He tells Ryder that if he swears his loyalty to him, he can have the Grail, which makes him laugh. He wonders on what basis Gilgamesh is judging everyone, so he mentions that it's the law he set down as king. Ryder notes that his style is to take everything he desires, because he's the king of conquerors, but Gilgamesh tells him he'll be punished if he breaks his law. Ryder realizes they need to fight, but he proposes they do it another time, because he wants to finish the drink Gilgamesh brought with him. Saber wonders why Ryder needs the Grail, and he reveals that he wishes to be reincarnated, which shocks Waver, because he thought his goal was to conquer the world. But Ryder knocks him back, telling him that conquering the world is his dream, so he won't allow a cup to fulfill it. He mentions that even though they have a physical form due to magic, they're still servants, so he wishes to live his life like a real man. Gilgamesh tells him that if that's the case, he'll kill Ryder himself, and Ryder mentions that he wants to take all of Gilgamesh's treasures for himself. Saber tells him his words don't suit a king, so he asks her why she's going after the Grail, and she reveals that she wishes to save Britain from its fate of destruction. Meanwhile, Kirei reports the situation to Tokiomi, who thinks such an opportunity to attack Ryder won't come again. So he tells Kirei to have all the assassins attack him, telling him it doesn't matter if they're defeated, because their goal is to find out Ryder's strength. Ryder realizes that Saber wishes to change the past, and she notes that Britain fell under her rule, so she wants to change what happened. But Gilgamesh laughs at her, since he can't believe a king is feeling regret. Ryder asks her if she plans to remove the marks she left on history, and she notes that she wishes to save the country she devoted her life to, which makes Gilgamesh laugh even more. She thinks a king should be willing to make sacrifices to ensure their country's prosperity, but Ryder tells her it's the people who must devote themselves to the king. She tells him he sounds like a tyrant, but he tells her a king who regrets his rule is worse than a tyrant. She reminds him that when his rule ended, his heirs were slain, and his empire fell apart. He mentions that he feels sad about it, but he never regrets what happened, and would never try to undo it, because it would be an insult to everyone who fought alongside him. She believes the king must protect the weak, thinking a king is a martyr to their ideals. He doesn't think it's how a person should live, but she can't expect to live like a normal person after she agrees to rule a nation. She tells him he can't understand her, because he became a ruler to satisfy his greed, so he tells her that a king without greed is even worse than a figurehead. He thinks a king should be greedier than anyone else, telling her they should embody the extreme part of everything, whether it's good or evil. He knows her ideals must have saved her nation, but he thinks she must know what happened to the people she saved, after they were left to fight for themselves. He tells her she has failed her people, all because she followed her ideals, so he notes that she isn't a true king. Gilgamesh laughs at her again, which makes her angry, and she prepares to attack him, but all the assassins suddenly arrive. Waver wonders why there's so many of them, so they mention that they're the same being that's been split into different bodies. Ryder tells him to calm down, and notes that a king's words are for everyone to hear, so he thinks it doesn't matter if they're there to listen. He offers them a drink, but they break his cup, so he prepares to take them on. Ryder puts on his armor, and before the fight begins, he asks Saber and Gilgamesh whether a king stands alone. Saber answers yes, but he tells her she's wrong, telling her he'll show her what a true king is like. They suddenly find themselves standing in a desert, as Irie realizes he's using a reality marble, but she thinks it should be impossible for a mental image to materialize in the real world. He summons his army, revealing that they were all offered to the world as heroic spirits, but they're all loyal to him, so Waver realizes that they're all servants. Ryder explains that his bond with them is his greatest treasure, revealing that he can summon such a world, because it still exists in their hearts, and he reveals that it's his noble phantasm. He rides his horse, telling Saber a king never stands alone, because his will is equal to all his followers combined. He orders his army to attack the assassins, and seeing that they don't stand a chance, they try to run away, but the army slaughters all of them. After that, everyone returns to the garden, and as Ryder is about to leave, Saber tries to stop him, but he silences her, telling her he no longer recognizes her as a king. He notes that she needs to wake up from her dream, or she'll lose all of her remaining pride, and he tells her the dream of a king she speaks of is a curse. Gilgamesh tells her she shouldn't pay attention to Ryder, telling her to keep following the path she believes in, and he notes that she might deserve more of his love someday. After he leaves, she remembers the time when a knight told her that she doesn't understand how others feel, and after listening to Ryder, she wonders if it's how everyone felt about her. Tokiomi asks Kirei how strong Ryder's noble phantasm is, so he mentions that it's on the same level as Gilgamesh's. Tokiomi is relieved they didn't attack him without gathering information, and he notes that it's time to move into the second phase of their plan, where they'll use the information they gathered to defeat everyone. Maya reports to Kiritsugu, telling him all the assassins have been killed, and he tells her to update him about their new base, so she notes that she'll take Saber and Irie there tomorrow. He goes over the information he has on the others, and thinks that even though Karia is an easy target, he should be left alive, because Berserker can be used to distract Gilgamesh. He knows Kenneth can't continue in the war, but he needs to find Lancer's new master, and he thinks that even though Ryder seems to have a big heart, he's still a dangerous enemy. He thinks about Kirei, wondering why he left the church if he's using assassin to spy on everyone, and Kiritsugu doesn't understand why he's coming after him. At the church, Kirei sees Gilgamesh sitting in his room, realizing he's in a good mood. He mentions that it's because he found something to entertain him, revealing that he finds it fun to watch people who have high ambitions, but aren't up to the task. He wonders why Kirei seems happy, and he mentions that it's because he's been relieved of a burden, so Gilgamesh wonders what happened to his command seals. He notes that once a master loses their servant, the Grail takes back the command seals, and if a servant loses their master, the Grail selects a new one, and gives them the unused command seals. He explains that the church protects the masters who have left the battle, because there's a chance they might be chosen again by the Grail, so Gilgamesh thinks Kirei might become a master again. Kirei notes that it won't happen, because he fulfilled his duty of helping the Tosaka family. He mentions that Tokiomi already has plans to defeat the other masters, but Gilgamesh notes that Tokiomi never struck him as a man fit to be backed by the Grail. Kirei notes that he has harsh words for his master, but Gilgamesh mentions that he has the wrong idea about his relationship with Tokiomi, revealing that he treats Tokiomi as just his vassal, who supplies him with mana as an offering. He notes that Kirei said Assassin had completed his task, so he asks Kirei about the matter they discussed, and he reveals that Assassin was able to find the motive of every master for needing the Grail. Meanwhile, Maya takes Saber and Irie to their new base, and on their way, Irie lets Saber drive the car. She wonders if selecting a base in the middle of the battlefield is a good decision, and Irie tells her the Tosaka and Mato families already have a base in the city. She explains that it will give them more advantage compared to the castle they were staying at, because the enemy won't know where they are. Maya drops them off at the base, and after looking around, Irie notes that even though the magical barriers are well laid out, magic will leak out because the place is too open. Saber takes her to a storehouse, which Irie finds perfect, thinking she'll be able to craft magic spells just like when they were in the castle. She notes that she needs help making a magic circle, and she tells Saber to get her ingredients from the trunk of their car, but she notices that Irie is avoiding touching anything. Irie tells her to hold out her hand, so that she can press it with all she's got, but Saber is surprised that she has no strength left. Saber asks her if she's hurt, but she notes that she just isn't feeling well, and reveals that she cut off her sense of touch, because it allows her to control her power. Saber thinks she should go to a doctor, but she explains that she isn't a normal human, so a doctor can't heal her. She asks Saber to help her make the magic circle, because resting in it will make her feel better. In the church, Kiritsugu tells Gilgamesh that Sola and Waver don't have any particular wish they need granted, while Ryunosuke doesn't even understand what the Grail is. He notes that Karia's goal is to win the Grail for the Mono family, because he made a deal with them to free Sakura. He reveals that Kiritsugu is only hired by the Ainsburn family to fulfill their dream of attaining the Grail, and Gilgamesh thinks all of their goals are boring. Kiritsugu notes that Gilgamesh made him waste his time, but Gilgamesh tells him his efforts have paid off. He isn't sure what Gilgamesh means, so he explains that he was able to discover who Kiritsugu is most interested in. He explains that except for Kiritsugu, who Kiritsugu didn't want to talk about, he was most passionate about Karia, but Kiritsugu thinks it's because his circumstances are interesting. But Gilgamesh notes that Kiritsugu knows so much about him, because he's the only one he told Assassin to watch closely. Kiritsugu admits that he overestimated Karia's abilities, and Gilgamesh tells him to imagine a scenario where Karia wins the war. But after thinking about it, he doesn't understand why he should imagine such a situation. Gilgamesh tells him that if he had told him to imagine the same situation with any other master, he wouldn't have given it any thought. But that wasn't the case with Karia, so he tells Kiritsugu to celebrate, because he finally has found what joy is. Kiritsugu notes that there's nothing in Karia's fate that can bring anyone joy, because his life is filled with pain and despair, but Gilgamesh mentions that joy has many forms. A command seal suddenly appears on Kiritsugu's hand, which shocks him, because no other servant has been freed from their contract. Gilgamesh notes that he must have a wish that needs to be granted, which is why the Grail keeps choosing him. He explains that if the Grail is truly omnipotent, it can understand Kiritsugu's wish that even he isn't aware of. So Kiritsugu realizes that Gilgamesh is telling him to use the Grail to learn what he truly desires, and he knows that to do that, he needs to defeat the other masters. But that would mean he needs to go against Tokiomi, and Gilgamesh tells him he needs to steal a servant from another master before doing anything. He's about to tell Kiritsugu what to do, but he stops himself, thinking Kiritsugu should do whatever he likes, because that's the true meaning of joy. Ryder wonders why Waver is taking him into town, so he notes that he just wants a change of scenery, telling Ryder he's the one who's always wishing to see the town. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke starts crying after seeing that their base has been destroyed, so Castor calms him down. He explains that everything created will eventually break, so they should find joy in the creation process. Ryunosuke wonders if God is punishing them for going too far, and Castor assures him that God won't punish them. He reveals that in his old life, he did all kinds of evil things, but God didn't do anything to him, and instead it was his fellow humans who killed him, because they were after his land and wealth. Ryunosuke still believes there's a God, because he doesn't think such an amazing world could exist just by chance. But Castor wonders if God loves them, and Ryunosuke notes that God spends all his time writing the story of humans, so no one can do such a thing if they aren't in love with it. Castor admires his views, but thinks it means all his crimes were for nothing. So Ryunosuke mentions that both blasphemy and devotion are a kind of worship, which makes Castor laugh, and he decides to do even more evil deeds. Waver goes to a bookstore, telling Ryder to do whatever he likes, as long as he doesn't go too far away, and he gives him money so he doesn't steal anything. In the bookstore, Waver finds a book on Ryder, and he reads that Ryder's goal was to reach the farthest ocean Oceanus. But before he can read more, Ryder arrives, revealing that he bought a game and a console. He wants to play it once they get back, but Waver isn't interested in low-class entertainment, saying he'd rather use his time learning the truth. Ryder wonders what's so interesting in the bookstore, and realizes he's reading a book about him, but he tells Waver that if he wants to know something, he should directly ask him. Waver mentions it's written that Ryder was supposedly short, so he wonders why he manifested in such a huge body, which surprises Ryder. He starts to laugh, and notes that you can't trust books when you don't know who wrote them. Waver is surprised that Ryder doesn't care if the books are wrong, because people in every age wish to be remembered for generations. But Ryder notes that instead of just his name being passed down for thousands of years, he would rather have had more time added to his life, since he died in his early 30s. As they go back, Waver mentions that even if he wins the war with a servant like Ryder, who's almost guaranteed to win, he won't feel any pride. He thinks it would have been better if he had made a pact with Assassin, but Ryder notes that he would have already died if that were the case. Waver tells him he doesn't care about that, as long as he dies in his own battle, because it's the reason he entered the war. Ryder mentions that if his wish for the Grail was something that impressed him, he would be more inclined to obey him. He tells Waver that the war isn't going to be the most important event of his life, telling him he'll someday be forced into his own battle. He thinks Ryder must be against their contract, because he would easily win if he had another master. So he shows Waver the world map, explaining that they're both just tiny dots on it, and Waver thinks Ryder means it doesn't matter how weak his master is. But Ryder notes that Waver's miserable attitude is also a quality of a conqueror, telling him that even though he's weak, he still tries to reach heights greater than he can imagine. Ryder notes that in the world he lived in, glory lies beyond the horizon was the basic rule, and Waver wonders if it's why he kept going east. So he reveals that it was his dream to see Oceanus, but he was never able to get there. They suddenly sense Castor, and we see Lancer monitoring Castor's actions with Sola. He decides to attack Castor, telling her to stay behind, and Saber arrives with Irie, asking Castor what he's planning. But he refuses to answer her, and a huge monster appears from the river. It absorbs him, and Ryder also gets there, revealing that he told everyone they need to work together against Castor. He mentions that Lancer has agreed to it, so Saber also decides to fight with them. Irie mentions that the monster is currently maintaining its form thanks to Castor's mana, but if it finds its own food source, they won't be able to stop him. So they need to defeat him before that happens, and Ryder doesn't know what to do, because Castor has been absorbed by the monster. Lancer thinks they should drag him out, thinking his spear can destroy Castor's noble phantasm if they expose it. Ryder mentions that he can use his chariot to attack, but he wonders how Saber will fight an enemy in the water. So she reveals that she can walk on water, because her body was blessed by the Lady of the Lake, and they all rush toward the monster. As Saber and Ryder attack the monster, it keeps regenerating, and Lancer mentions that if things continue like that, they won't be able to win. At the church, Kiritsugu reports the situation to his father, who notes that they haven't faced such an embarrassing blunder in the history of the Holy Grail War. He notes that the situation is out of their control, so they need help from the Mages Association. He tells Kiritsugu to help Tokiomi and Gilgamesh, who have already gone to face the monster. Gilgamesh watches the monster from above, and he feels sorry for everyone, since they're struggling to defeat it. Tokiomi thinks they must take care of the situation before more people show up, so he asks Gilgamesh to fight it. He notes that it's an opportunity for him to show his strength to everyone, since they're all no match for the monster. So Gilgamesh launches his weapons at the monster, but it regenerates, and he tells Tokiomi they should get out of there, because he can't bear to look at it anymore. Tokiomi begs him to stay, but Gilgamesh mentions that 4 of his treasured weapons have already been defiled by the monster. Tokiomi notes that the monster needs to be defeated in a single blow, and the only thing capable of doing that is Gilgamesh's Sword of Rupture. But he becomes angry, because Tokiomi is asking him to use his ultimate weapon. He thinks about using the command seal to make him fight, but he knows that it would destroy their relationship. There are 2 jets that arrive, and one of them gets closer to have a better look, but the monster devours it with its tentacles. The second pilot decides to attack, and he prepares to fire missiles at the monster. But Berserker suddenly appears on top of the jet, and takes control of it, so Tokiomi leaves to take care of Karia. Berserker flies the jet towards Gilgamesh's ship, who shoots his weapons at it, but he dodges the attacks, and fires back at him, but Gilgamesh manages to stop the missiles. Tokiomi appears before Karia, who wonders why Tokiomi gave away Sakura to Zoken, so he notes that he only wished for her to be happy. He explains that a mage can only pass down their family's secrets to one child, which means any mage with 2 children needs to abandon one of them. He mentions that both Rin and Sakura were born with rare potential, and the only way to make sure they live up to it was giving up one of them for adoption. So it was a blessing in disguise for them when the Manos came for Sakura, because they're a family that's aware of the Holy Grail War, meaning they might be able to attain the root. Karia becomes angry, and he mentions that he'll end both Tokiomi and Zoken's lives. Tokiomi notes that Sakura only got the Mono magic because Karia refused to inherit it, so he should be thanking him. But he can't forgive him for running away from his responsibilities as a mage, so he prepares to attack, but Karia summons a swarm of insects. Kiritsugu is watching them from the shadows, but he decides to let them fight. Meanwhile, the monster grabs onto Ryder's chariot, so Saber cuts off its tentacles to set them free. Runosuke is excited, thinking people will die without him having to do anything, but Kiritsugu suddenly shoots him. As he sees his own blood, he realizes the thing he's been looking for was inside him all along. but Kiritsugu finishes him off, and Castor takes out his grimoire, swearing to fulfill his promise to Renosuke. Kiritsugu tells Maya he took care of Renosuke, and she wonders if they should eliminate their next target, while the servants are fighting the monster. He tells her they shouldn't take the monster lightly, because if it gets to the shore and starts to feast, it will allow Castor to continue maintaining his form. So they need to finish it in one blow, and he thinks Saber's noble phantasm can do that, but she can't use it since she's cursed by Lancer's spear. Saber continues to attack the monster, but she gets caught by its tentacles, so Ryder comes to her rescue. He tells her to retreat, and notes that he has a plan, telling everyone he'll lure the monster into his noble phantasm, where his army will attack it. But he thinks it won't be enough, and Lancer wonders what they should do, so Ryder mentions that they need to come up with a strategy while his army keeps it busy. He tells Waver to stay behind, because he doesn't know what will happen if the reality marble breaks, so he needs him to summon him back in case of an emergency. Meanwhile, Gilgamesh continues to shoot his weapons at Berserker, who manages to block all of them. He thinks Berserker should just crash the jet into the monster, but he's shocked as it suddenly disappears, since Ryder took it into his noble phantasm. Karia uses his bugs to attack Tokiomi, but his barrier protects him, and he's disappointed that Karia can't even land a single attack on him. He burns Karia, and tells him to be thankful since he's giving him a quick death, but Karia refuses to give up, and jumps off the roof. Waver asks Irie if she has a plan, and she gets a call from Kiritsugu, which Waver picks up. He reveals that Ryder made the monster disappear, and Kiritsugu wonders if Ryder is capable of deciding where the reality marble appears. Waver explains that it's possible if it's within 100 meters, so Kiritsugu notes that he'll fire a flare, and he needs Waver to free Castor there. He also asks Waver to tell Lancer that Saber's left arm has an anti-fortress noble phantasm. So he shares the information with Lancer, who asks her if her noble phantasm can really defeat the monster in one blow. She thinks that it can, and he notes that he can never forgive Castor for his actions, so he breaks his spear, which lifts the curse from her left arm. As she reveals her sword, Berserker attacks her, which makes Gilgamesh angry that Berserker is turning his back to him. But before he can do anything, Berserker destroys his ship, and continues to attack Saber. Meanwhile, Kirei finds Karia in an alley, and he's about to finish him off, but he stops himself as he remembers Gilgamesh's words. A soldier from Ryder's army appears before Waver, and he asks the soldier to tell Ryder to wait for his signal, before he releases the monster at a specific spot. Lancer teleports to Berserker and destroys his jet, but he grabs a machine gun, and prepares to shoot at Saber, but Gilgamesh hits him with his weapons. Kiritsugu fires a flare into the sky, so Ryder releases the monster at the position, and Saber prepares to use her ultimate move. Castor sees the light, and starts to cry, thinking it's the ray of happiness bestowed upon him and Jean, but Saber's attack turns him to dust. Gilgamesh asks Ryder if he still refuses to acknowledge her, so he notes that her sword contains the hope of her people, but it's why he feels bad for her, because she carries such a heavy burden. He mentions that she's a cursed person who'll never experience love, which is why he can't even bear to look at her, but Gilgamesh thinks it's what makes her beautiful. Gilgamesh realizes that Ryder has figured out his true identity, wondering if he still wants to fight. But Ryder notes that he's too tired to take him on, since he just used his noble phantasm. Gilgamesh notes that he won't feel satisfied if he doesn't beat him at his best, so he allows him to leave, and Ryder thinks their fight will determine the winner of the war. After he leaves, Gilgamesh mentions that he can only eliminate one person with his ultimate weapon, but he hasn't decided if he'll use it on Ryder. Kenneth meets with Rise and asks for a command seal, since Lancer was a big part of taking down Castor, but Rise thinks he isn't fit to be a master in his present condition. Meanwhile, Sola is also waiting to be rewarded a command seal, thinking it will allow her to be with Lancer forever. But Maya suddenly cuts off her arm, which makes her panic, since she won't be able to summon Lancer anymore. Maya reports to Kiritsugu after knocking her out, and he tells her to get out of there. But before she leaves, she makes sure to destroy Sola's hand. Kirei decides to save Karia, and he knows that he betrayed Tokiomi, but he's confused because instead of feeling regret, he feels excited. At the church, Kenneth notes that the contract with Lancer was a joint ownership between him and Sola. So even though she has the command seals at the moment, he still has the authority over the contract. Rise agrees with him and gives him a command seal, but before he leaves, Kenneth shoots him in the back. He mentions that he only has one command seal, which puts him at a disadvantage, so he won't allow the others to get any more seals. After that, Kenneth yells at Lancer for failing to protect Sola, and Lancer mentions that he wasn't formally contracted to her, so he wasn't able to keep track of her. But Kenneth notes that he's just making excuses, and tells him to be more alert. So Lancer tells him Sola is still alive, since he's still getting mana from her. Kenneth mentions that it doesn't matter if he can't track her, but notes that he's also at fault, because he gave her the command seals. Lancer notes that he shouldn't have accepted her as his master, but Kenneth tells him to stop acting, because he was the one who encouraged her to get the command seals. Kenneth thinks he seduced her, but Lancer asks him to take back his words, telling him all he wanted was to fight honorably. But Kenneth tells him to know his place, since he's just a spirit reincarnated through magic. He tells Lancer that if he doesn't agree with what he's saying, he should resist the command seals, but he knows Lancer can't do that since he's a servant. Saber and Irie arrive, and Lancer wonders if they know something about Sola, but they have no idea what he's talking about. He thinks Saber must have used up a lot of her power against Castor, so he wonders why she's there. But she notes that the other servants won't disturb them since they're also tired, so she thinks it's the best time to finish their duel. As they start fighting, Lancer realizes that Saber isn't using her left hand. But she tells him not to get the wrong idea, telling him her blade would be slower if she used it. Kenneth watches the fight from the shadows, and he's confused why Lancer isn't winning. He thinks it would be better if they just ran away, because their main focus is to find Sola, but he's shocked as Kiritsugu suddenly appears with her. He gives Kenneth a self-restraint certificate, which is a magic item used to form an unbreakable contract. It forbids Kiritsugu from hurting Sola and Kenneth forever, and Kenneth reads the condition, but he realizes that if he signs the contract, he won't be able to get the Holy Grail. He knows that the contract can't be broken by any means, so even if someone passes away, their ghost will still be bound by the contract. He starts crying, since he doesn't know what to do, and Kiritsugu prepares to shoot Sola. Saber and Lancer continue their fight, but he suddenly stabs himself, as Kenneth uses his command seal to make him take his own life. We learn that it was the condition written in the contract, and as Lancer turns to dust, he curses them, since they took away his only wish of having an honorable fight. After that, Kiritsugu tells Kenneth that the contract is in effect, but Maya suddenly shoots him and Sola. He begs Kiritsugu to end his life, but he notes that he can't hurt them due to the contract, so Saber finishes the job. But she notes that after seeing what he's done, she can't believe that the reason he's going after the Grail is to save the world. Irie tells Kiritsugu to explain his actions, so he notes that it was the only way, because if he had only taken out Kenneth, another master would have formed a contract with Lancer. But she tells him to explain that to Saber, because she's the one who needs to hear his words. He thinks she'll never understand, because she fights in the name of honor. He explains that knights can't save the world, because they act like they're better than everyone else. He mentions that such illusions made by the heroes of the past have caused countless people to lose their lives in the name of honor, but Saber notes that they at least give up their lives following human laws and ideals, or else the world would fall into darkness every time a war breaks out. He notes that she believes the battlefield is better compared to hell, but in reality, the battlefield is the true face of hell, because everything ends in despair. He mentions that humans refuse to see the truth, which is why in every age, heroes come forward and lead people into war, but they forget about all the blood that's spilled during the battle. Irie wonders if he's shaming Saber, since he doesn't agree with heroic spirits, and he notes that he's just choosing the method that best fits the battle. Saber mentions that his hatred will only cause more pain, and she notes that his rage and sorrow are the qualities found in people who seek justice. So she thinks that when he was younger, he wanted to become a champion of justice, and he believed in the heroes to save the world more than anyone. He notes that he'll make sure the blood spilled in Fuyuki is the last in the history of humanity, so if it means he needs to bear the sins of the world, he'll do it happily. But after he leaves, Irie suddenly passes out. Kirei returns to the church, where he finds his father's body, so he reports it to Tokiomi, who wonders why someone would kill a priest. As Kirei is about to leave, Gilgamesh tells him to at least pretend to be sad, since his father just passed away. He notes that he's sick to his bones, but Gilgamesh wonders if it's because he couldn't end Rise himself. Meanwhile, Saber takes Irie to the magic circle she made in the storehouse, which manages to heal her. But Saber senses someone near them, and Irie tells her not to worry, since it's just Maya. She tells Irie that Tokiomi wants to form an alliance with them, and Irie thinks it's because he's afraid of Ryder and Berserker. She notes that he proposed an alliance with them because he must think they're the most likely to accept, which means he's underestimating them. Maya believes Kirei is being controlled by Tokiomi and thinks they have no choice but to accept the proposal. But Saber has no idea who Kirei is, so Irie mentions that he's the only one who can defeat Kiritsugu. They go to the church, where Tokiomi greets them and introduces them to Kirei. He explains that he decided to work for him after he lost his servant, and we see Kiritsugu listening to their conversation through a bug Maya is wearing. Tokiomi mentions that the only ones left in the war are the masters of the 3 founding families and 1 outsider. He wonders what their views are on the current situation, telling them they can't let the Grail fall into the hands of an outsider. Irie notes that an alliance is out of the question, but if he hopes for them to take action against the others, it will depend on his sincerity. She proposes a ceasefire and tells him they have 2 requests. The first one is that he needs to give them all the information he has on Ryder and Waver, and the second one is that he needs to remove Kirei from the war. She notes that there's a history of bad blood between him and the Ainsburn family, but Tokiomi has no idea what she's talking about. After that, Saber leaves on a motorcycle to secure the road, and Maya and Irie are about to follow her, but Irie starts to feel weak, but she tells Maya to keep driving, or else Tokiomi will get suspicious. She notes that she was expecting her condition to deteriorate, thinking it's a miracle she was able to live like a normal human for so long. But she knows that she'll soon return to her original form, so she won't be able to talk to Maya again. She reveals that Kiritsugu gave her the Avalon because it can stop aging, but it doesn't work when Saber is too far away from her. Maya wonders why she's telling her everything, so Irie mentions that it's because she knows Maya won't feel sorry for her. Maya notes that she'll protect her until the end, telling Irie she should give up her life so that Kiritsugu can fulfill his wish. At the church, Tokiomi tells Kirei to withdraw from the war, and after that, he meets Gilgamesh, who knows he wants to continue fighting. He notes that he's been looking for an answer all his life, and after suffering for so long, he's finally about to find what he's searching for, but he's worried that he'll perish after he finds it. He gets a call, telling him the location of the Ainsburn clan's hideout, which makes Gilgamesh realize he isn't planning on withdrawing from the war. Kirei shows him his arm, revealing that he took all of the command seals from his father's body. But Gilgamesh tells him that if he continues to fight, Tokiomi will become his enemy, and he needs to stay under the same roof as him, so Kirei notes that he has a plan. He mentions that the ritual carried out in Fuyuki involves using the 7 heroic spirits as a sacrificial offering in an attempt to open a passage to the root. So all the servants need to be killed to get the Grail, and he mentions that it's the reason Tokiomi is saving his command seals. He explains that after everyone else is defeated, Tokiomi will use the seals to make Gilgamesh end his own life. Kirei wonders if he is still loyal to Tokiomi after learning of his true motives, but Gilgamesh mentions how Tokiomi gives him the mana that he needs to stay in the world, so he can't just break their contract, but it might be possible if Kirei becomes his new master. After that, Kirei meets Tokiomi, who tells him that if something happens to him, he's made arrangements for Rin to become the head of the Tosaka family. He tells Kirei he'll serve as her guardian, and he gives him a dagger, which marks the completion of his apprenticeship, but Kirei stabs him in the back with it, and Gilgamesh forms a contract with Kirei to make him his new master. In a flashback to when Kiritsugu was still a boy, he plays with his friends, but a girl named Shirley comes to pick him up. On their way, she tells him about the history of the island, and reveals that in the past, it was used to worship the sea god. But one day, a girl took the food that was offered to the god, because she couldn't find anything to feed her mother, but she was turned into a crab as punishment. She mentions that the temple for the god is near his house, which is why the villagers stay away from it. But he notes that everyone treats him normally, so she mentions that it's because they no longer consider him an outsider. They reach his home, where his father Narukata is carrying a flower. Kiritsugu wonders why none of the flowers wilt, so his father notes that he froze their time. Shirley also manages to do it, and Kiritsugu asks for his father's permission to try it. But he mentions that it's too early for him, and explains that he only allowed Shirley to try it because she had the sufficient experience and knowledge. The next day, a priest named Simon tells Shirley she shouldn't go to Kiritsugu's house. Kiritsugu believes things would be different if his father socialized with everyone, but she doesn't think that would be the case, telling him Simon has something against Norakata. She reveals that he warned her evil spirits will come after her if she keeps going to his house, and he even gave her a dagger to protect herself, but she just uses it to cut open her fruit. At night, she notes how amazing Norakata's magic is, and Kiritsugu reminds her how she was also able to use it, but she knows that Norakata is way above her level. She mentions that with his formula, even a human can live forever, so she wishes everyone would see who he truly is. She notes that he has already given up on his research, but she believes Kiritsugu can use it to help everyone. He reminds her that she's his father's student, so she should be the one to fulfill that dream, but she notes that she's just his assistant. She explains that if she were his student, she would have defended him when Simon was criticizing him, and she tells Kiritsugu that Norakata will leave his life's work to him. She takes him to a river, where she wonders what he'll do if he takes over his dad's work, telling him he'll have something that will be able to change the world in the future, but he decides to keep his plan a secret, so she tells him that she'll stay by his side to watch what he'll do, which makes him blush. The next day, Norakata tells Kiritsugu to stay in the house, but when Shirley doesn't come to meet him, he goes out to look for her. He sees her eating a live chicken, and he tries to get close to her, but she moves away, telling him she was just trying to prove Norakata's theory, but she failed. So she throws her dagger toward him, asking him to end her life while she still has control of her body. He brings Simon to show him what happened to her, and he tells Kiritsugu to stay put while he warns everyone else. But he's attacked by vampires, who turn their attention to Kiritsugu, but before they can get to him, the church members take them out. He goes to the village, but he's shocked to see that everything's on fire, as the members of the Mages Association arrive to deal with the vampires. Kiritsugu ends up being surrounded, but a girl named Natalia comes to his rescue. She fills the vampires with bullets, and she tells him to be careful if he doesn't want to turn into one of them. He doesn't understand what's happening, so she reveals that there are two groups that are fighting the vampires. The first one being the executors from the church, who eliminate everyone they think has left the path of God. And the second group is the Mages Association, who are more interested in finding the secret behind the vampires. But they eliminate anyone who knows the secret except for themselves, which is why they set the village on fire. He wonders which side she's on, so she notes that she's a mercenary who's an enemy of the association, asking him about the mage who created the first vampire. Kiritsugu goes to his house, asking his father why he's studying vampires, and Kiritsugu tells him that Shirley turned into one after using his magic on herself. But he notes that even though it's tragic, there's nothing they can do to change the past. Kiritsugu wonders if he'll also turn him into a vampire, but Norakata tells him Shirley was a failure since she couldn't control her bloodlust. He notes that their family's goal is to reach the root, which they can't achieve if they're restrained by death. He tells Kiritsugu they need to run away, but he suddenly stabs him with Shirley's dagger and shoots him to death. When Natalia arrives, Kiritsugu explains that if his father had run away, he would have continued his research. So she notes that she'll take him away from the island, telling him he can decide what he wants to do next for himself. He continues to live with her after leaving the island, but he realizes she's just a freelancer who does any job that gets her money. In the beginning, she refused to take him with her, but as she allowed him to join her, he realizes that the tragedy on the island is a daily occurrence in the normal world. As they're on a job, a father and his son try to get away from the area since they're being shot at, and Kiritsugu tries to save them. But Natalia stops him, which leads to the father and son being shot down. Kiritsugu notes that he ended his father's life because he wanted to stop innocent people from dying. But she explains that eliminating one bad person won't do anything, telling him the only way they can make a change is if they get rid of everyone. She tells him never to give up on living, and notes that it won't do any good if he dies trying to save someone. He mentions that he never thought about saving anyone, but after hearing her say that, he wants to save all the people that he can. They get a job to eliminate a mage named Vorzak, and Natalia mentions that he's a vampire who turns people into ghouls using bees. She reveals that he destroys every town he goes to, and as she starts to smoke, Kiritsugu asks her if he can try it, so she tells him she won't stop him. He finds out Vorzak will be on a flight from Paris to New York, and she plans to face him alone, revealing that he already escaped from her once, so she wants to finish the job. Kiritsugu thinks it's dangerous to face him alone, but she notes that he won't have his bees with him in the cabin, and she tells Kiritsugu to take care of Dvorak's allies in New York. Natalia sits behind Dvorak on the plane, and she puts a magic spell on his seat, which causes him to have a painful death. Kiritsugu eliminates his allies, but she can't believe how easy it was to defeat him. After that, she kills Dvorak's bees, but as she prepares to get rid of his body, she realizes that there were bees hidden inside him, and they turn everyone into ghouls. Kiritsugu tells her to escape, but she mentions that she didn't bring a parachute. Seeing that she has no other choice, she decides to save the plane by getting into the cockpit, and she promises him that she'll make it back alive. After a while, she contacts Kiritsugu again, telling him she managed to get into the cockpit, so she can use the autopilot system to land the plane, but the bad news is that everyone except for her has been infected. She isn't worried about anyone getting into the cockpit, but she doesn't know what they'll do if she manages to land the plane, so he tells her he already has a plan. She mentions that he put her in a tough spot when he told her that he wanted to work for her, and he wonders if it's because he was a bad student. But she notes that he's incredibly talented, because he can already do the job without showing any emotion. He thought she was a cold-hearted person, but she trained him with care, so she notes that she felt bad, because his father should have been the one to train him. She tells him she's happy that she found something that's close to family, since she's been alone all her life. He notes that he always thought of her like his mother, but she tells him they shouldn't talk about things that will make it awkward for them when she returns. She notes that she isn't as vicious as before, so maybe she should quit the job, but he asks her what she would do after retiring. She thinks that with nothing to do, she'll really need to act as his mother, but he tells her she's already his family. But as he sees her plane, he fires a rocket launcher and blows it up. He falls to his knees, but notes that he didn't make the same mistake as sparing Shirley. He thinks he saved countless people, because if Natalia had landed the plane, there's no telling what would have happened, but he can't control himself and starts to cry. Back in the present, Kiritsugu goes to visit Irie, who gives him the Avalon, telling him he'll need it in his final battle. She feels blessed to have fallen in love with him, because he gave her something she could only dream of. He still wishes for her to see more of the outside world, but she notes that if she missed out on anything, he should show them to Ilya. As he's about to leave, Maya tells him Saber has gone to look for Ryder, and he thinks that when they start to fight, Gilgamesh will also appear. So he'll use the opportunity to take care of Tokiomi, but as he goes to the Tosaka mansion, he's confused because there's no magic barrier around it. Meanwhile, Waver goes to the spot where he summoned Ryder, because he thinks Ryder will be able to heal quickly there, and he notes that he'll give Ryder as much mana as he needs. He wonders why Ryder didn't tell him about his condition, and he notes that it's because he didn't realize the fight against Castor took such a great toll on him. Waver realizes that his noble phantasm uses all of his energy, wondering why Ryder only uses his reserve mana. So he explains that if Waver gives him too much mana, it will put his life at risk, but Waver is okay with it, because he won't be satisfied if he wins without giving it his all. Ryder tells him that it's only the case if the Grail really exists, revealing that he promised his men he would lead them to Oceanus, which they thought was the end of the world. But when he was summoned by Waver, he realized that it doesn't exist, because the world is round. He wishes that no one else would die for something that doesn't exist, so he tells Waver he'll agree to him putting his life at risk, after they find out that the Grail really exists. Ryder thinks they should attack Saber tonight, and Waver wonders if he can recover by that time, so he notes that he'll be okay. But he can only use his noble phantasm one more time, and he plans to save it for when he fights Gilgamesh. Waver wonders why he's going after Saber, and he notes that he needs to give her a good beating, or she'll continue down the wrong path. Karia dreams about Berserker devouring him, and as he wakes up, he tells Zilken there's no point in healing him, but he just laughs at Karia's pathetic condition. He notes that he didn't expect Karia to survive for so long in the war, so he'll give him his ultimate trump card. He makes him swallow a worm, telling him that it's the first one that fed on Sakura's purity. At the hideout, Irie wonders why Maya fights for Kiritsugu, so she explains that he means everything to her. She reveals that he was the one who came up with her name, because she doesn't remember her past. The only thing she remembers about her country is its extreme poverty, and how it was drowned in war. But they didn't have the money to run the army, so they decided to make children fight as well. Kiritsugu saved her, so she's willing to do anything for him. She notes that she's amazed by Irie, because even though she had never left the castle, she's still willing to give her life for Kiritsugu. Irie tells her she never understood his ideals, but she always told him it was okay for him to sacrifice her to achieve his goal. Maya wonders if she has any wish for herself, so she notes that her desire is for Kiritsugu and Saber to win the war, because if his dream comes true, the war will stop forever. Maya wonders if her wish is because of Ilya, and Irie notes that if the war continues, Ilya will be next to fight in it. So if they succeed in their goal, Ilya will be able to live a normal life. She asks Maya what she'll do if Kiritsugu wins, and she notes that she never thought she would be alive at that point. But if she survives, she'll end her own life, because the new world won't be a place where someone like her can live. Irie tells her to continue living, telling her she should look for her parents, but she notes that they can worry about it after they win the war. Ryder suddenly arrives, and Maya calls Kiritsugu, who's at the Tosaka mansion, where he finds out that Tokiomi was eliminated. He uses a command seal to teleport Saber to their hideout, where she finds Maya injured, but she tells Saber to go after Ryder, saying Kiritsugu will come to save her. As Kiritsugu arrives, Maya tells him he shouldn't cry, because he should save his tears for his wife, and as she passes away, he tells her she was able to fulfill her duty. Ryder flies away on his chariot with Irie, and Saber follows them on her motorcycle, but she loses sight of them, so she senses their presence to find where they are. Ryder sees her coming after him, but he's surprised by how fast she's driving, so he lowers his chariot to the ground, telling her he'll finish his battle with her with a race. She realizes the bike is at its limits, so she uses magic to transform it, and Waver is worried since she starts getting close to them, which impresses Ryder. He mentions that he won't play by the rules, so he slams the side of his chariot into the wall, making the broken pieces fly towards her, but she dodges all of them. She uses a boost on the motorcycle to catch up to Ryder, and she tries to attack him with her sword, but he blocks her attack, and she's shocked to see that Irie isn't with them. Meanwhile, Kiritsugu interrogates a man, and he knows that Waver wouldn't have the intel to find their hideout, so it must have been the Mato family. He asks the man where Irie is, but he says he doesn't know anything, and Kiritsugu shoots his leg, asking him where he can find Karia. The man reveals that he went with a supervisor from the church, so Kiritsugu realizes he's working with Kirei. We learn that the one who kidnapped Irie was Berserker, who transformed into Ryder, and Karia wonders if it was worth using 2 of his command seals. But Kirei gives him more seals, telling him he can use them as much as he likes as long as they're together. Karia finds it hard to believe Irie is the vessel for the Holy Grail, and Kirei mentions that he'll give him the Grail after the war. But he reminds Kirei that he promised to do something else before that, so he tells Karia to go to the church at midnight, telling him he'll find Tokiomi there. But after he leaves, Kirei tells Zoken to come out from the shadows. Waver wonders if Ryder is really planning to fight Saber, and he notes that there's a small delay before she can use her noble phantasm, so he'll wait for her to activate it before he attacks, and Waver thinks he's insane, but he explains that she'll only be truly defeated if she loses in a fair fight. He hopes she'll join his army after he defeats her, and Waver realizes that Ryder never looks down on his enemy, telling him to win no matter what. He rushes towards her using his chariot, but before he can get to her, she uses her noble phantasm and slashes him. We return to Kirei, who wonders what Zoken wants from him, so he notes that he just wants to know how Kirei plans to destroy Karia. He explains that he never gets tired of seeing Karia suffer, but Kirei asks him if he's going to reduce the chances of the Mato family's victory by interfering with his plan. Zoken finds it difficult to choose between winning the war and seeing Karia suffer, and Kirei wonders if he really likes to see his son in pain. But he knows that Kirei is the same as him, because he was attracted to Karia's rotting flesh like a maggot. Kirei becomes angry hearing this, and attacks with his knives, but his body turns out to be a fake, and the real Zoken hopes that the next time they meet, Kirei will be able to stand toe-to-toe with him. Meanwhile, Ryder manages to dodge Saber's attack, but his chariot is destroyed, so Waver tells him to use his noble phantasm, but he refuses. Saber decides to leave instead of attacking him, and he praises her motorcycle, but Waver notes that it isn't something he should say after losing the fight. As Karia goes to the church, he wonders how much time he has left to live, but he tells himself he can't give up before reaching his goal. He arrives at the church, where he sees Tokiomi sitting on a bench, but as he gets close to him, he realizes that Tokiomi is already dead, and Ice suddenly arrives. He tries to explain that he didn't do anything, but she doesn't believe him, and she asks him if he's finally satisfied, because the Mono family will win the war. She wonders why he did it, and he notes that if it wasn't for Tokiomi, all of them could have been happy. But she yells at him, telling him someone like him isn't capable of liking anyone. He thinks about how he endured everything, because he wished for her to be happy, but he can't bear to have her hate him. So he ends up choking her to death, while Gilgamesh and Kirai watch him from above. Waver returns to his home, where his grandfather is sitting on the roof, and he asks Waver to join him, but Waver tells him they should talk another time. Ryder thinks his grandfather loves him, and Waver notes that it's because he's under his spell. But Ryder still tells Waver to talk to him, because he thinks he has something important to say. As he goes to the roof, his grandfather gives him coffee, and Waver wonders how long he's been up there, so he reveals that he's been waiting for him to return since the morning. He mentions that it's always been his wish to watch the stars with his grandchildren, but he never got the chance, because his real grandchildren never spent time with him. Waver realizes he knows he isn't his grandson, so he wonders if he's angry at him for charming them with magic to live there. But he notes that he should be thanking him, because ever since he came into their lives, his wife has been happy. He hopes Waver will continue to live with them, but he notes that he can't promise that, because he doesn't know if he can return alive. So his grandfather tells him that after living for a while, he realized that nothing is more precious than life. At Mount Enzo, we see Kiritsugu thinking about how he needs to perform a ritual at one of the 4 spirit veins in Fuyuki to win the war. But he didn't find Kirei at the Tosaka mansion or the church, so it leaves the last 2 spots, which are the Fuyuki City Hall and Mount Enzo. Saber arrives, but she apologizes because she couldn't find Irie, and as she leaves, she tells him to use the command seal to summon her if something happens. We see Kirei holding Irie at Castor's base, and he tells her Kiritsugu will never find her there. He thinks he'll win the war, but she notes that she'll never give him the Grail. She tells him to be on guard, because Kiritsugu considers him his greatest enemy, and she notes that Kiritsugu has seen through him. But he'll never understand Kiritsugu, because he doesn't have his ideals. He wonders what she thinks about him, and suddenly grabs her, saying he knows Kiritsugu is a hollow person, but he doesn't understand what makes them so different. He asks her why Kiritsugu is going after the Grail, so she reveals that his wish is eternal world peace. But she notes that Kirei won't understand it, because Kiritsugu has faith and he doesn't. He mentions that it's basic human instinct to fight, so if they take it away, it will end humanity. He thinks Kiritsugu's wish is just like a child's playful thinking, but she notes that it's the reason Kiritsugu needs a miracle to achieve his goal. Kirei grabs her hair and chokes her to death, but he starts to smile, because he has finally found a reason to fight, thinking he wants to destroy Kiritsugu's dream. Waver wakes up in the middle of the night, and he asks Ryder why he didn't wake him up. Ryder mentions that they shouldn't rush into battle, because he thinks they will have a winner tonight. They see someone firing flares into the sky, but seeing their pattern, Waver notices that someone is claiming they've already won the war. Ryder thinks they're telling everyone who disagrees to come fight them, and he summons his horse, telling Waver to get on it. But he suddenly uses all 3 of his command seals, ordering Ryder to win the war and conquer the world. He notes that he's no longer Ryder's master, so he can do whatever he wants. But Ryder picks him up and puts him on the horse, telling him that even if he isn't his master, he's still his friend. He starts to cry, asking Ryder if someone like him can stay by his side. But Ryder tells him he shouldn't need to ask such a thing, because they've gone through life and death situations together, so they'll always be friends. Kiritsugu notes that Kirei has chosen the most unsuitable place to start the ritual, which means he isn't after the Grail, and he's just using it as bait to gather all the masters. Kiritsugu thinks his real goal is to kill him, so he realizes that he will need to fight him. Kirei tells Gilgamesh that if he releases his power near the ritual, it might disrupt it, so he needs to go out if he wants to fight. But Gilgamesh wonders what will happen if the place is attacked while he's away, and Kirei notes that he'll use his command seals to protect it. Gilgamesh mentions that he can't guarantee the Grail's safety, because he won't hold back tonight, and he asks Kirei if he still doesn't have any wish he needs the Grail to grant. So he notes that he still hasn't thought of anything, saying his only wish is that no outsider will interfere with their battle. As Gilgamesh is about to leave, he tells Kirei that if Saber appears, he should let Berserker fight her. He wonders what happened to Irie, since the Holy Grail vessel is in her body, so he mentions that he killed her, because he doesn't need her anymore. Gilgamesh appears in front of Ryder, but instead of attacking each other immediately, they decide to have a drink first. Gilgamesh wonders what happened to his chariot, so he mentions that Saber destroyed it. Gilgamesh reminds him that he let him go before because he wanted to defeat him at his best, so Ryder assures him that he's in his best condition. Gilgamesh believes him because he feels Ryder's commanding aura is more evident than before, thinking he has a plan to win. Ryder notes that if he gave his army the weapons from Gilgamesh's treasury, it would make them invincible, so he asks Gilgamesh to become his ally, telling him they can conquer the world together. But Gilgamesh starts to laugh, telling him he only considers one person his ally, and he thinks there's no place for second kings. Ryder goes back to his horse, and Waver mentions that it feels like he's friends with Gilgamesh. But Ryder notes that he can't give him the cold shoulder, because he might be the last opponent he ever faces, and he uses his noble phantasm to summon his army. Meanwhile, Saber is attacked by Berserker, who starts shooting at her, but she manages to get close to him and cuts his gun in half. But before she can attack him, he takes out another gun. We see Karia in pain, since Berserker is fighting, and he starts to hallucinate that Sakura is standing in front of him. He tells her he's fighting because Kiritsugu promised to give him the Grail. He promises to save her, so that they can play like they used to, but she wonders if she'll be able to see her mother again, which makes him lose his mind. Berserker continues to attack Saber, and she uses a car as cover to get close to him. But as she tries to hit him with her sword, it doesn't do anything to him, since her attack is too weak. She jumps in the air to put more power into her attack, but he catches her sword, which shocks her, since he knows the length of it, so she wonders if he's a knight she knew in her previous life. She notes that if he's a knight, he should tell her what his name is, because going into battle unrevealed is a cowardly act. So he reveals his true self, but she's shocked to see that he's her old companion Lancelot. She wonders what happened to him, because he was known as the first warrior on the Round Table, but he attacks her with his sword, telling her she only cared about saving her people. But she never led them, so she realizes that her ideals are the reason for how he ended up. Ryder and his army rush towards Gilgamesh, who summons his ultimate sword, telling them he'll put an end to their endless dream and show them the harsh truth. He activates his sword, which causes the reality marble to crumble, and Waver wonders if his noble phantasm has the power to destroy all creation. The ground splits in half, and the army falls into it, as Ryder's noble phantasm is destroyed. They return to the real world, and Ryder asks Waver if he's willing to serve as his follower. Waver starts to cry, telling Ryder he's his only king, so he'll only be loyal to him. Ryder puts him down from his horse, and tells him it's his duty as a king to inspire others. But it's Waver's responsibility as his follower to see his dream to the end, and tell it to the future generations. He rushes forward, so Gilgamesh summons his weapons to take him on. Ryder tries to block them, but he gets overwhelmed and loses his horse. But he refuses to give up, and continues to charge forward, enduring everything Gilgamesh throws at him. He manages to close the distance, and as he prepares to attack, Gilgamesh suddenly holds him in place with his chains and stabs him with his sword. He acknowledges Ryder, telling him to challenge him again anytime he wants, since the world is his courtyard until the end of time. After Ryder disappears, Gilgamesh asks Waver if he's Ryder's master, but he notes that he's just his follower. Gilgamesh thinks it's his duty to avenge his king, but Waver notes that he was ordered to live on, so Gilgamesh decides to spare him, telling him to stay loyal to his king. Kiritsugu and Kirai finally come face to face with each other, and Kirai rushes towards him as he uses his command seals to strengthen his knives. Kiritsugu fires an origin bullet at him, thinking he won't survive if he gets hit, but his knives shatter as he blocks the bullet, which surprises Kiritsugu. As Kirai gets close to him, Kiritsugu uses his time alter technique to dodge the attacks. He opens fire, but Kirai deflects his bullets, and Kiritsugu realizes that the reason his origin bullet didn't work on him is because he's using the command seals as his source of mana. So before the bullet could affect his body, the seal he used for mana disappeared, which means he won't be affected since he isn't using his own magic circuit. Kiritsugu thinks he can defeat him using the origin bullet if he can get a good shot, while Kirai thinks Kiritsugu won't be able to dodge his next attack. He instantly rushes towards him and delivers a devastating blow, which sends him crashing into a wall. He thinks he has won the fight and turns his back on Kiritsugu, who suddenly opens fire, but Kirai blocks the bullets. Kiritsugu uses his time altar to reload his revolver before Kirei can reach him, and he shoots Kirei with his origin bullet. He tries to deflect it, but as it hits his hand, it destroys his arm. Kiritsugu thinks he can't beat Kirei in close combat, but he needs to reload his weapons, and he knows that Avalon gives him an advantage. We learn that Kirei's attack should have killed him, but Avalon regenerated his heart, so Kirei thinks he will need to destroy Kiritsugu's brain to defeat him. Kiritsugu uses his time altar to triple his speed, and he charges in, but Kirei still manages to block all of his attacks. He sweeps Kiritsugu's leg and prepares to land a counterattack, but Kiritsugu uses time altar to dodge it, and manages to create distance between them. He tries to use the chance to reload his gun, while Kirei rushes towards him, but their fight is interrupted as the Grail appears from Irie's body, and it floods everything around it with blood. Meanwhile, Saber and Lancelot continue their fight, and she struggles against him, wondering if he went berserk because of her. But Karia runs out of mana, and Saber stabs Lancelot, telling him she needs to win the Grail, or she'll never be able to make it up to him. Kiritsugu is suddenly teleported to a beach, where he sees Irie standing beside him. She notes that she always believed he would arrive there, telling him it's the place where his wish will be granted. She reveals that they're inside the Holy Grail, and notes that even though it hasn't been completely formed, the vessel has been filled, so all he needs to do is say his wish. But he points his gun at her, asking her who she is, because he knows that if the Holy Grail has appeared, it means Irie has already passed away. She mentions that if she didn't use her pre-existing personality as a shell, she wouldn't be able to communicate with others. But she notes that she inherited Irie's last wish, and he realizes she's the will of the Holy Grail. She reveals that she also has the wish to be born into the world, and he wonders if she can grant his wish for peace. So she tells him he already knows how to achieve his dream, but he has no idea what she's talking about. Kiritsugu suddenly finds himself in a room where he sees a video on a TV. A voice tells him there are 2 boats with 300 and 200 passengers, and they're the last people left on Earth. But there's a hole in both ships, which only he can fix, and the voice asks him which boat he'll save, so he mentions that he'll fix the ship with 300 passengers. But the voice notes that after he makes the decision, the ship with 200 people hold him hostage and tell him to save them. The voice asks him what he'll do, but before he can answer, he's distracted by something outside his room. He goes to see what it is, and he sees a ship filled with bodies, as the voice tells him the correct decision is to eliminate the 200 people. But the voice mentions that the 300 people he saved split into 2 other ships, with one containing 200 people, while the other one has 100, and the same situation as before happens. As he keeps listening to the voice, he keeps moving through different locations, and he sees the ship with the 100 people getting blown up. But he doesn't understand the sense behind such decisions, because in order to save 200 people, he killed 300. The voice tells him he decided to save the majority by sacrificing the minority, and notes that it's what he's been doing all his life. It tells him he doesn't care about the trail of bodies he leaves behind, as long as more people are being saved. He returns to the beach, where the voice tells him it's exactly what the Grail will do to grant his wish, but he notes that he wants a different solution, which is why he's been wishing for a miracle. But he's told that if his goal is to save the world, it can only be achieved in a way that he can understand. He thinks it can't be called a miracle, but the voice notes that it is, because the Grail can achieve something he failed to do, on a scale unimaginable to humans. The voice asks him one last question, telling him he needs to sacrifice one of his loved ones to save the other 2. He decides to save Irie and Ilya, and the Grail tells him it's how his wish will be granted, but he also sacrifices both Ilya and Irie, thinking he needs to kill them to save the world. So the Grail curses him, telling him he'll suffer for the rest of his life. He wakes up in the real world, and holds Kirei at gunpoint. He asks Kiritsugu why he refused the Grail, so he realizes that Kirei saw everything that he went through. He notes that Kiritsugu sacrificed everything just to reach his goal, so Kirei wonders why he let the Grail go when he was finally able to achieve his dream. So he explains that it's because the cost is greater than the benefit it offers, and Kirei mentions that if that's the case, he should let him have the Grail. He notes that the Grail is worth everything to him, because once it's born into the world, it can answer all of his questions, but Kiritsugu shoots him. Meanwhile, Saber finds the Grail, but Gilgamesh is already there, and she prepares to attack him, but he stabs her with a sword, telling her to surrender and become his wife. She can't believe he's taking the Grail away from her for such a reason, and she refuses his offer, so he summons his weapons, telling her she will feel pain before she gets the joy of serving him. But Kiritsugu suddenly arrives, and he uses his remaining 2 command seals to order Saber to destroy the Grail, which shocks both her and Gilgamesh. So her sword activates, and she's forced to attack the Grail with her noble phantasm. She thinks about how she can't hope to understand Kiritsugu when she couldn't understand her right-hand man, who was with her all her life. But after the dust settles, Kiritsugu is shocked to see that a red cloud has appeared above the city. Blood rains from the sky, and it destroys everything in its path, so he tries to save everyone he can, but he breaks down crying, because there are no survivors. Meanwhile, Karia returns to the Mado family house, where he saves Sakura, and takes her to meet Rin and I. But in reality, he's eaten by the worms in the pit, and Sakura calls him a fool for going against Zoken. We learn that Kirei is still alive, and as he wakes up, he sees Gilgamesh beside him. Kirei asks him what's going on, but Gilgamesh notes that he isn't sure, and he reveals that he now has a mortal body. He can't believe they all fought for the Grail, thinking it would grant their wishes, and Kirei wonders why he's still alive, because his heart isn't beating. He wonders if Gilgamesh healed him, but he notes that in the same way he was reincarnated into a mortal body, Kirei must have also experienced something that can't be explained. Gilgamesh mentions that they've won the war, and he notes that if the Grail fulfilled the wish of the winner, it means what Kirei sees before him is what he's been seeking. He starts to laugh, since he can't believe he desires such a corrupted world, but he refuses to believe it, and Gilgamesh wonders if he's satisfied. But he notes that even though he's been given the answer he's been looking for, he didn't see how it happened, so he'll spend the rest of his life finding out what caused it. He knows that the Grail will appear again in the future, and he plans to join the next Holy Grail War, while Gilgamesh still finds him interesting, so he decides to stay with him to watch his quest. Kiritsugu appears, and Kirei prepares to fight him, but seeing the look on his face, he realizes that Kiritsugu has given up on everything, so he decides to leave. Kiritsugu starts to dig the rubble, and he manages to find a boy, so he starts to cry, thinking that if he can just save one person, he can still have redemption. The next day, Waver tells his grandparents he wants to travel the world, which makes them happy, but he mentions that he needs to get a job to prepare for his journey, so he asks them to allow him to continue staying with them for the time being. He heads to his room, where he sees all the mess that Ryder made, and he goes through his stuff as he recalls the moments they spent together. After Tokiomi's funeral, Kirei tells Rin that she did well in her first showing as the family's new head. He notes that thanks to Tokiomi's arrangements, she'll inherit the Tosaka family magic without any problems. He thinks they should meet her mother, and we learn that she's still alive, but she's gone insane because she thinks Tokiomi is still alive. Kirei tells Rin he won't be in Japan for a while, wondering if she needs anything, and she tells him she doesn't need his help. But he still gives her the dagger that Tokiomi gave him, which makes her cry. Meanwhile, Saber sits on top of a pile of bodies, where she cries as she remembers Lancelot's words. He told her that if she had punished him for his actions, he wouldn't have fallen into madness to seek redemption. So she thinks she failed him, thinking she didn't deserve to be king, and she promises to win the Grail for her fallen comrades. Kiritsugu notes that after the war, he tried to go and meet Ilya, but since he failed to get the Grail, the Einsburns never put their magic field down, so he never got to see her again. We learn that he adopted the boy named Shiro, and 5 years later, we see them sitting together at night. Kiritsugu tells him that when he was young, he wished to be a hero of justice. Shiro wonders if he gave up on that dream, so Kiritsugu explains that once he grew up, it became difficult to call himself a hero. He wishes he had known that sooner, but Shiro promises to fulfill his dream on his behalf, and Kiritsugu decides to entrust the future to him. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.